Thank you. We're going to switch things up a little bit, and I'm going to call the meeting to order first because we are live streaming everything. So at 6 o'clock, we will call the meeting to order. So welcome to the Tuesday, December 11th, 2018 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. I now call the meeting to order. The meeting is being recorded and aired live by LCTV, as well as being live streamed on longmeadow.org. It is a legal requirement for anyone else to disclose if they are recording the meeting. Okay. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So to the Student Advisory Council, I just wanted to let people know that typically the Advisory Council would come in at 6 o'clock. We would have them give a report off camera, and then we call our regular meeting to order. Since we have people in the room and we have people that we want to accommodate who are watching at home or in the overflow room, it makes sense for us to live stream all of it, so it's a legal requirement that everyone can see and hear the meeting. So I know for all of you coming, this is unusual for you to be on camera, so just act like you normally. I'm actually kind of happy that it is on camera because you guys come to us every month and you have really wonderful things to contribute and say. So I'm happy that people can hear this. So just so you're comfortable with it, it is being recorded and you can kind of move the microphones between each other for whoever wants to speak. But at this point, we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, so I'll start us off. So I'm just gonna explain the update with the traffic, the parking lot drop-off pickup update since I last met with you. So basically, since then, we met, me and the rest of Student Advisory Council met with Sergeant Mazzaferro of the Long Meadow Police Department. And I basically gave him the same pitch that I gave you guys. Basically went through the plan with him, showed him the photos, showed him basically everything else he needed to know to really understand what the plan was about. Generally speaking, he liked the plan. He realized that there is a huge issue with the drop-off pickup with regards to the traffic in the mornings and after school. And so he acknowledged that, right from the get-go when this new school was built, that there was a lot of engineering issues that could have been dealt with better, mainly with regards to separating the buses, the students, and the cars. So like you guys, he proposed some of his own opinions. For instance, like another entrance into the parking lot, but minor things. Basically want to keep the plan kind of how I proposed it. But he did like the plan, and afterwards we went outside to kind of look at where things would need to be handled, new construction sort of thing. But again, the construction is very minimal. And in that, when we were outside, I brought over my car and attempted a U-turn just after the divider where the U-turn would plan to be going in, and it was successful, very easy, no problems. But of course, if the plan were to actually go through, I believe there would still be some construction that would need to be done. He also proposed, making some sort of right turn onlys at certain times, and we talked about how, like, the residents on that street, living on Grassy Gutter, would deal with that, and we went into a lot more detail that the police department usually handles. And but overall, again, he did like the plan. And after the meeting, I emailed him a short explanation of the plan along with all the photos he needed, and he is passing it on to the people it needs to go to next. He passed it on to the traffic committee, which I believe meets every 1 or 2 months. And he just sent me an email, which I just got note of. He said they tabled to discuss the new traffic plan to their December meeting. So that's what's on the agenda for that meeting. And so since then, he's been talking about the rest of the police department and I believe the roadwork engineers who work with the town of Long Meadow as well. So that's pretty much the update for the plan.
That's great. Thank you. That's great. We've talked about this before, and I've applauded the efforts. And I believe when we talked last time, you were thinking of a plan in engineering
Yes.
Yes. So I love that you guys are staying on top of this, and I love that you did a test run. I
Yes.
think I'm very excited for next steps and hearing how it progresses. So thanks for updating
Yes,
us.
of course. Thank you.
So I just want to give an update on sports. So the fall season just ended a few weeks ago, and it was very successful for Longmeadow. Football won the Western Mass Finals after losing the last 3, so that was good. Girls field hockey captured their 8th straight Western Mass title. Boys soccer fell just short. They lost 1-0 in the Western Mass Final, but they also had the best regular season in their history with 15 wins. And the winter season has just begun.
Thank you.
Okay, so now that it's December, clubs have kind of gone past like the recruitment stage, and they all kind of have like numbers for how many people usually attend. And some are still starting up because they're kind of seasonal. Like I know mock trial is only a winter thing because that's when the competitions are. And then Model Congress, which is a club that kind of gives students the opportunity to pretend to be a member of Congress, that is seasonal and is in just January. Another new club this year is Israeli Club, which is a club that allows people who want to learn more about Israel to come and learn about that, which is cool. And then some changes this year is that Key Club is no longer meeting every week. They're meeting kind of like once or every other week. And then Model UN is adding a new conference. We might be going to Dartmouth or MIT or somewhere in Boston. We haven't decided yet. And then BPA just finished No Shave November, which is one of its biggest fundraisers for the year. And then Debate Club didn't really happen last year. It was very small, but this year it's been kind of advertised more. More people are joining, and it's looking like it's going to be a big success this year. I know there's going to be a few conferences in around spring, I'm pretty sure. And then for the Jet Jotter, it just released its first edition when Q1 ended, and it's working on its second one. They're currently interviewing students and writing their pieces. So.
Thank you for the club update.
One more club, Science Olympiad. We signed up for 3 competitions, and our first one is at MIT in January. And just for like some background, Science Olympiad is like schools go to a university and then we all compete in these science competitions, and then they give awards at the end of it. And last year we finished 14th in the state, so we're looking to edge up a little bit.
Still impressive.
Just quick commendation to the students for their continual interest in growing our clubs and revising and refreshing the rosters and the activities, and to the high school admin for their willingness to get behind student interests and activities. So we got something like 50 clubs or so at the high school, is that right? More than 50, Mr. Dunkerley?
63.
63 we're at. So if there's an interest, there seems to be teachers always willing to step up to help out, and the administration's always there to support as well. And I'm always impressed at how the academic orientation of a lot of our clubs and activities, whether it's debate, Model UN, Science Olympiad, Chemistry Olympiad, Math Club. I mean, there's so many clubs that allow kids to extend their learning sort of outside the school day. So great things happening in LHS extracurriculars. And so thank you guys for pushing that along.
On the note of extracurriculars, so overall music has been going pretty well. A little bit after our meeting last time in October, we had a chamber concert, and all the ensembles, men's chorus, concert band, etc. They all did well. And after that, we had Western District's auditions, and that went great. Most people got in, and we even had one kid who made a jazz pianist, and that's like one spot in the entire district. And soon we'll have all-state auditions, so
also just to add on to music, next week we have an LHS talent show, which I don't believe we've had for, I think, maybe 2 years or so. I don't think the student government has decided to do it. but hopefully we're going to have some pretty entertaining but maybe less serious music acts, and maybe singing, some instrumentals, maybe some other unexpected displays of talent.
Do we know when that's to be expected? Because it sounds very, I think you might get a lot of attendance at that.
It's next week, I think.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Friday before.
Yeah.
And it's during school.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the music department also just finished up its fruit sale. I don't have exact numbers on that for sales or anything, but I believe we did pretty well. Both Jeff and I were there the entire day for the fruit sale, and I think we probably did it at least as well as we've done in past years. So I would consider that overall a success.
I think that
Thank
fruit
you.
sale is about as old as Long Meadow High, right? It's been going on for decades, so, yeah, it's great.
Thank you for the update.
Oh, and then the sophomore class just had its annual lock-in on October 19th and went well. One change this year is that we lowered the price from $45 to $40. Just because the students really they expressed interest in $40, and we realized that if we lowered the cost, we could still afford the same activities through the night. We had 2 bounce houses and movies running in the auditorium. We tried something new. We had a game room in the teachers' lounge, which was interesting. And then we had a knee hockey tournament in the BTC, which was fun. And then the final profit from that was $5,385.02.
Thanks for the update. I'd be curious if when you lowered the price, did you find that maybe you had more attendance?
Yeah, we did, because we really wanted to do $45 because we would have made a lot more money. But we went around asking people, and they said that some people said that they would come only if it's $40. So we lowered it for them.
I will confirm it was a success. I did do the 10 to 12
Oh yeah.
volunteer
Thank
shift,
you.
and the knee hockey tournament was pretty heated.
Yeah, people
So,
got into that.
yes, it was intense. So thank you for the update.
I think I may have mentioned this last meeting, but Beauty and the Beast very successful. They had about $10,000 in ticket sales. First night completely packed. I think they completely sold out, and they're still figuring out how much profit they made. So.
And I think they did well, even though on Thursday night we had a lot of snow, so they had to cancel one of their performances. But I think they did well on the other 2. So.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any in terms of updates?
No?
No?
Okay, yeah. Let me just take a step over the mic. Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a letter on behalf of the Student Advisory Council that was signed by pretty much every single member of student government and every member of the Student Advisory Council, LHS, asking that the members of the school committee who voted in opposition to Superintendent O'Shea's contract renewal give more explicit reasons for why they thought their decision was the right one. I'm sure all the members of the school committee have likely received this. By now, I got one personal response from Ms. Monahan. So if any other members of the committee have any responses to this, I'm sure it'd be welcomed by the rest of my fellow committee members and by everyone else in this room.
I would just say that I thank you for writing the letter. It was read, it was received. I believe it's in our packet this evening. In terms of any questions, I would just refer you to the minutes of the meeting for 11/14. That will give an overview. We will approve those minutes tonight. I'm like having a problem with the alliteration, minutes. But you can go ahead and refer to those. But I always welcome student response, and we did receive your letter, and it was read.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have. You guys have any questions for us?
Anyone? I will open it up to the committee if anyone has anything additional that they want to ask or comment on. No, I would. I would say, as always, you always impress. I think you're under fine leadership and support with Mr. Dunkerley, and I've been impressed ever since you've been coming to our meetings with the things that you bring us, and I'd say continue the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
I don't think we need to recess. We can just technically it's posted before. We will recess until 6:30 when we resume the regular portion of our school committee meeting. Yep.
I'll make a motion to recess until 6:30.
Second. Motion has been first and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so motion passes. We will recess until 6:30. Thank you. I will now call the December 11th, 2018 school committee meeting back to order, and we will resume with our agenda with correspondence.
The following correspondence will be recorded. An emailed letter dated November 30th, 2018 from Mr. Donald Jarvis of Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative regarding the Student of the Month for November 30th, 2018. Longmeadow students honored are Charles Miranda, Building Property Maintenance, Austin Munson, Graphic and Visual Design 2, Joshua Hebert, Integrated Occupational Prep. An email response to the school committee chair's message sent on November 19, 2018, received from Mr. Mike Briggs on November 21st, 2018. An emailed letter from Mr. Tom Landers received on November 26, 2018, with an update on the NEASC accreditation process for the Longmeadow High School. Emailed letters regarding the school committee's decision on the superintendent's contract from the following people. Received on November 26, 2018, Kevin Shea. Received on 11/27/2018, Alex Grant, Lori Bernardi, Kelly Zemba. Received on November 30th, 2018, Paula Welch, Lynn Hopkins. Received on December 3rd, 2018, Donald Gaffney, Marcy Jorgensen, Lynn Hopkins, Colleen Cummings, Kella Ziba. Received on December 4th, 2018, Robert Mulcahy, Bonnie Soltz Knowlton, William Knowlton, Lisa Kelly, Candace Matthew Healy. A letter from members of the school committee Student Advisory Council received on December 4th, 2018, regarding the school committee's decision on the superintendent's contract. An emailed letter from Ms. Jen Cosgrove regarding the posting of the evaluation subcommittee meeting. An emailed letter received on December 5th, 2018 from the administrative team requesting a meeting with the school committee.
Thank you for the correspondence. We can move into the approval of minutes. And we do have some recommended motions for our meeting minutes.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the November 6th, 2018 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
We have a motion first and seconded. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing as none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes to approve the minutes for November 6th.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the November 14th, 2018 school committee meeting as presented.
Second.
Motion first and seconded. Any further discussion on the minutes? We have a motion first and seconded. Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? So the motion passes, and we have approved the minutes for the November 14th school committee meeting. We will now move into our visitor comment portion of the evening. I do have the list for visitor comments. I'm familiar with some of the names. I know some people have spoken before, but just to go over the process, I will call the name. Please state your name and your full address. You do have up to 3 minutes to comment. I just want to make sure that people are mindful and aware that public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the committee. So I will call speakers forward as I read the names. We'll start with Neil Guile. Mr. Landers, are you separate or? Okay.
Good evening, school committee members. We once again formally and publicly request a meeting with you to allow us an opportunity to discuss mutual perceptions regarding the relationships between the administration team and the school committee under Marty O'Shea's leadership. We believe intentional and direct dialogue among us is something that has not occurred throughout the complex 2-year period involving your concerns with Superintendent O'Shea's leadership as it relates to the admin team. As we move forward, we trust that this important conversation will build a stronger understanding among all stakeholders, which will lead to an enhanced partnership. Here are the confounding points which were brought to our attention by you, the school committee, that we hope to discuss and add clarity to so that we have a better understanding of each point from your perspective. Marty has failed to build consensus and manage conflict between the school committee and the administration, and has created an us-them versus them climate, promoting and/or doing little to diffuse a divisive working environment between the administration, staff, and school committee. Allows school committee members to be disrespected, and has worked behind and around the members. The need for a strong vision for the future of the district, because under Marty's leadership, there has been no shared vision between the school committee and the administration. Marty has demonstrated a lack of initiative in the creation of and the follow-through with the district goals and the vision. Marty has been criticized for not moving the district forward and failing to focus on the students. And lastly, the notion that Marty considers any questions from the school committee about the work we do an affront and/or an overreach. In closing, there is strong agreement among all the members of the administrative team that under Superintendent O'Shea's leadership, we have thrived as a team, and the district has accomplished a great deal in 2 years. We look forward to discussing these points with you that we have raised, or that have been raised with us, to us, and the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas Landers, I serve as principal of Long Meadow High School. Good evening. I want to share some thoughts about what I would have said if the meeting that Dr. Guile just referred to was held between administrators and members of the school committee. Since such a meeting couldn't be held, and one of the specific reasons provided for not renewing the superintendent's contract was his failure to build a positive and supportive rapport between the school committee and the administrative team, I feel the need to share my observations and experiences about this aspect of Marty's leadership style. I also want to say that I recognize the authority of this committee and last year's committee, because some of what I will speak about reaches back to last spring. I respect your authority to make decisions about the superintendent's contract. Serving on a school committee is hard work, tireless work, and generally thankless work. I also know that tough decisions are part of the job, and that not everyone is going to be happy about all decisions that are made. As principal, I often have to make decisions that people are not happy with. I always try to deliver the message with kindness and leave others with their dignity and self-respect intact. It is important to treat others like this. People appreciate this, and they remember this, even when they disagree with our decisions. So what my comments here tonight will focus on is more how things have happened rather than what has happened. I think it's fair to say, whether or not you were a supporter of Superintendent O'Shea, that most reasonable people would describe last May's public evaluation of Marty to have been a rough and unenjoyable experience for him. I have heard it described by some in this town as a public flogging rather than a public evaluation. It was, by all reasonable standards, over the top, in both its sharpness and its duration. It lasted almost 2.5 hours. I have heard some townspeople describe this 2.5-hour public display as being the moment they committed themselves to become involved in this issue. While some were concerned with what was included in his written evaluation, more were upset about the manner and way that he was treated during the process. People watch those of us who work in the public sector, and they care about not only what we do, but how we do it. To be subjected to such repeated critical and stinging feedback in a long and public forum, approximately a month and a half after school committee members had publicly made commitments about moving forward positively and collaboratively, must have been hard for the superintendent, both personally and professionally. However, some way, somehow, Marty was able to remain an optimist and use this experience as motivation to move forward. I really don't know how he was able to remain so positive in late May and June of last year, yet he did. This continued into summer and early fall. His ability to take the high road and speak positively and collaboratively about those on the school committee who had admonished him so harshly last spring truly amazed me. It amazed all of us on the admin team. As principals and members of the central admin team, we often commented to each other on how frustrated we were at the way that Marty was treated. We often discussed the fact that if we spoke to a student or parent like that, we would deservedly have been called on the carpet for speaking to people like this. We discussed these ideas and frustrations consistently among ourselves, but Marty seemed to be able to rise above it, and he let us know that he needed us to do so as well. Again, it amazed me, sometimes to the point where I wondered if Marty O'Shea was actually human. I don't know if I don't think that I could have maintained the positive perspective and composure that he did. At every turn, in all kinds of settings, even when the opportunity to be cynical or critical would have been easy, Marty chose to be positive, professional, cordial, engaging, and classy. He modeled this on a regular basis at every administrative team he has held over the last year. He showed commitment to this when he invited school committee members to join the admin team retreat this past summer. He continued it when he planned a joint meeting with school committee members and administrators in late September to meet in an informal setting to talk about roles, responsibilities, partnering on challenges, and identifying shared goals. While meetings like this sometimes feel staged and awkward, they are a good faith effort to allow people to let their guards down and hopefully bond. It was a nice gesture that was genuine. Marty also invited all principals to visit a school committee meeting early on in the fall to share information about our approaches to students and SEL efforts. The meeting that I attended here with our team of counselors seemed to go well, and I was feeling positive about the normalcy of the beginning of the year and the good work being done on so many fronts. When people asked me how things were going for Marty, I could genuinely say things seemed to be going well because there were no indications to the contrary. Efforts and priorities were moving forward in positive directions, and impressive things continue to happen at all 6 LPS schools. When I learned that things had turned negative in terms of his evaluation, I was surprised. I know it may sound naive after the issues of last year, but I truly believed that no reasonable person wouldn't be able to see the good work being done by both the superintendent and the school committee. In my view, I was appreciative of how far things had come from last spring. So, while I recognize and respect the authority and the majority of the school committee to extend or not to extend the superintendent's contract, and while I recognize that challenging decisions are often put in front of you, I speak tonight to counter the criticism offered publicly in regards to the superintendent not trying to mend fences, build bridges, reestablish trust, and show respect for everyone. He has done this in spades. He has done this with consistency. He has done this more than anyone else on the school committee or the admin team. If showing a commitment to working collaboratively and respectfully with others was a competition, Marty O'Shea would win that competition hands down. Yet for Marty, it wasn't a competition. It was and continues to be his style, his authentic approach. He has sincerely and genuinely modeled this approach for all administrators over this past year. Superintendent O'Shea can hold his head high in regard to how he has comported himself and how he has clarified his expectations to others, including his principals and colleagues in central administration. He tried his best to build a positive culture with all members of the school committee. There is no doubt about this. He attempted at every turn to work together, to model mutual respect, to act collaboratively, to be inclusive, to elicit feedback, to show flexibility, to act with purpose, to be considerate of others, and to work as a true partner. We will be lucky to find someone in the future so dedicated to treating others with the respect and dignity that Marty shows to people. If he leaves us, I will miss him, and I will wish him all the best. He certainly deserves this, and he has earned the right to be treated with the respect that he has shown to others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neighbor. Mr. Steve Chandler. I just asked that those are holding the signs. You can have the signs, they just need to stay like below the shoulder because the cameras can't pick up the meeting with the signs elevated. Thank you. Mr. Chandler.
Good evening. My name is Steve Chandler. I live at 60 Duxbury Lane here in town. So after hearing that, I'm going to try to curtail some of this so we don't browbeat or I don't do any of the things that we were just advised to try to do to stay friendly and maintain a good working relationship. I'm here to talk about the failure to renew Superintendent O'Shea's contract. I have been following this since that meeting last May, and I am one of those people that was solidified by the way that that meeting was carried and how Dr. O'Shea was treated at that time. I want to bring up a couple of things that have happened so far and sort of my position and view of it as a parent living here in the town. It appears to me that the entire Long Meadow Public Schools administration leadership team has endorsed the superintendent. They've done it repeatedly. Some of them are here today doing it. 3 of the 7 of you voted to renew his contract. So about half of you believe that it's worth working on this relationship. You've heard from hundreds of residents. I know between emails and people talking here in the meetings that you're certainly getting heard, getting the voice of the town. The police chief has come in here and addressed you directly. The fire chief has addressed you directly, and it's about their relationship with Superintendent O'Shea. We've had high school students come in here tonight. They did a great job, spoke very well, and asked for explanation and clarity about what exactly is going on, a reasonable thing to ask that I was a little upset about because he's stealing some of my thunder. The Long Meadow Educational Association, representing 382 members, the people that we trust every day to leave our children with, have asked you to renew Dr. O'Shea's contract and reconsider what you've done and how you've gone about it. They've also had a vote of no confidence, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with union work, but a vote of no confidence is a big deal, and it's more than just a symbolic gesture to say that they don't believe that you can do your job adequately. Immediately following that meeting, 940 residents signed a petition to ask for the 4 of you to resign. I was one of those. I don't necessarily want you to resign, but I want you to really reconsider what you're doing and be more transparent about what's going on and how this is happening, and we'll talk more about that later. Through all of this, you don't respond. You don't respond to people's requests for transparency. You don't respond to letters. I have sent several and received no response. We ask questions about budgeting for a search and we don't get a response. It appears that the goal here is to hide behind personnel privacy laws and say we can't talk about it and hope it goes away. I can promise you that this isn't going to go away. I would think that the attendance that's been shown at the meetings is going to continue to climb, and you're going to see more and more people looking for clear and transparent open government, something that we all deserve. So what are we left with next? No response from the school committee members who will not go into more detail about why they can't reevaluate the situation. And now we have 234 residents who've signed a petition to amend the town charter to allow for recall elections, and those were certified on December 7th, and now we're moving towards a special town meeting in order to try to forcibly remove you from your position in early January. Again, something that I think most people don't want to see. So there are options. I am here to ask you to reconsider the mistake that you've made, to reconsider the decision, to reconsider how it's been handled and how it's been done. You are not locked in yet. You can reconsider this vote. You can talk about this and bring forth an open and clear process that explains to everyone why you feel the way you do. If you feel that you are so right about the failure to renew this contract, then it should hold up to an open and transparent process. This one hasn't been. So if you're right, just have a process that everyone can support, and we'll let the results speak for themselves.
I'm just going to ask if you can wrap up. It's just been 4 minutes, so
Sure.
if you just have...
Yeah, I'm told I can talk.
Okay. Just wanted to make you aware.
Absolutely. So yeah, in the end, I would like you to recognize that it's not about right versus wrong. I know that it feels a little bit now at this time like you're digging your heels in to try to prevent having to admit that you're wrong, but we can look at this from a constructive point of view and come up with a process that everyone can support. And then if the evidence supports that, I think you'll find residents behind you instead of in overflow rooms listening to these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler.
My name is Jen Cosgrove. I live at 18 South Park Avenue, and I appreciate the chance to comment. I want to add my voice to others asking members of the school committee to work out a compromise in the best interest of the district. 4 out of 7 members of the school committee have concluded that it would be better for us to look for a new superintendent. Some members of the community support the decision of these duly elected officials. Others, like myself, do not. I can't support a decision that minimizes our district's achievements during the past 2.5 years that Dr. O'Shea has been superintendent. Achievements that were only possible through the successful collaboration between and leadership of the school committee, the superintendent, and our educators. I can't support a decision that glosses over the truly remarkable support that Dr. O'Shea has earned from administrators, teachers, staff, and town public safety leaders. I can't support a decision that asks us to accept that some members of the school committee and the superintendent can't work together out of public view more like they do in public view, which is collaboratively and productively and respectfully. I can't accept a decision that says it's better to start over than it is to build on what's working and to fix what's not. Our influence as voters is not limited to elections or the lead up to decisions made by elected officials. At all levels of government, voters routinely seek to influence policy and decisions through public comments, meetings with public officials, petitions, demonstrations, and more, both before and after decisions are made. Some decisions are just more final than others because there's not much opposition, or opponents run out of options available to them as citizens, or run out of time, or both. That's not the case with this decision. There's very strong opposition and still time and compelling reasons to work out a compromise. As all committee members know from the town charter, a 4-3 vote would not be enough to hire a new superintendent. The legal requirement for committee members to reach broader consensus than you have right now is clear. I, for one, urge the members who voted in favor of renewing Dr. O'Shea's contract to use all the leverage that the town charter affords them to advocate for a compromise solution. And I urge all committee members to work out a compromise that addresses the legitimate concerns of different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Susie Bell?
Thank you. My name is Susie Bell, and I come here tonight more with a technical comment regarding things that have been happening around the renewal of the superintendent's contract. And part of the reason I come to you with that technical request and suggestion is because of my experience as a superintendent for the past 4 years in another district. It seems you have an open meeting law complaint that you addressed in the last meeting. and you decided to move that to an investigation with the school committee's counsel. Given that that process takes a good probably 4 to 6 weeks with council's schedules, your own schedules, whoever else needs to be, interviewed during that time and the full investigation to be completed, then it would make sense, in my opinion, given my experience working with a school board in another state and another district, that you should probably think about suspending the process of looking for another superintendent. Part of the reason being is you're actually spending time and resources towards a process that may be null and void if you have to render the original vote null and void. And you could have a change. People have been talking about, before I came up here, about the opportunity to possibly come up with a compromise. Consider all that's been coming forward, all of the information from the administrators, the teachers, the students, everyone who, and the parents who are supporting the superintendent, but come up with a compromise. You'd have another opportunity to do that. Having time is really a valuable thing here. Time to listen to the constituents of the community, time to listen and compromise and think about a better solution moving forward for our students in our schools. The other thing that does is it gives the school committee an opportunity to really get up to speed with what a search process takes. I was able to watch the previous meeting about the search process, and there were comments made by the school committee members, and please understand, I know about your job. Your job is a tough one. There is no question about that. I give you tons of respect and admiration for even being willing to do this work. It's very hard work. But the superintendent search process is a very important process. It's one of the most important things you will undertake in your experience. I think the time that you would have by suspending the search process would give you the opportunity to educate yourselves on what your responsibilities will be in that process, if it comes to that. My hope, sincerely, is that it doesn't, because I believe that Dr. O'Shea is doing a tremendous job here in this district, and that's coming from a seasoned educator in another district. So I just urge you, please, to consider not wasting time, further resources on a search process that may not have to happen in the end, and consider all the different people who have come forward asking you to please reconsider and come up with a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Hebert.
I'm hearing you out there.
I'm sorry, Mark Hebert.
Well, thank you to the 6 of you who've been dutifully paying attention to everybody who's talking, and I appreciate the time to speak. My name's Mark Hebert. I'm from 78 Quintuck Road, and you can hear me? Good. Please start listening, because you have a lot of townspeople who would like to talk to you, and we hope that you actually hear us and listen to us. I have many concerns regarding the non-renewal of the contract of Dr. O'Shea. Many people have spoken to your great skills, your character, the things that you have accomplished, and with all due respect to you, I'm not going to talk about that right now. What I'd like to do is to focus on some of the more financial aspects of this process, basically. I really want to focus primarily, initially, on the lawyers. Thus far in the financial year 2018, or at least in the calendar year 2018, based upon the Freedom of Information that we received, you've already spent $24,000 on legal expenses related to this process. $24,000. I can think of a lot of other things that I would like to spend my tax dollars, their tax dollars on, than this nonsense. Secondly, we recently understand that the Longmeadow Education Association has filed another open law meeting law violation, violation complaint. We, the townspeople, will have to sponsor the lawyer at $225 per hour to defend this act, something that shouldn't have happened in the first place. given the current climate in this room that we've seen over the past month and a half, a supermajority is required for you to hire a new superintendent. I believe that's correct. That's what your expert that you brought in, your consultant, said. There is no way, under this current climate, that you're going to reach a supermajority. You're going to spend endless hours, resources, and money, my money, your money, your money, your money, on this process. Finally, we've learned that you plan to fund much of this search. Just making certain you're paying attention.
Of course I'm paying attention. Why would I not be
I'm sorry,
writing
we're
all
not
the
supposed to have a conversation.
I need to take the notes on what you're asking. You're asking a lot of
We
questions.
have learned that you have planned to take funds, educational funds, to fund the search for the superintendent. You're taking money that is needed for our schools, that our assistant superintendent wants for K-5 social studies books, that they want for 8th grade civics books. And you're going to use that money, our money, my money, on this. It's absolutely unacceptable. Here's the bottom line. We believe that you, as a committee, are not good stewards of our resources in the great town of Long Meadow. We granted you money, the townspeople of Long Meadow, to the school budget, to the school department, and we do not feel that you're using it appropriately. As such, we're prepared to collect and submit 200 signatures for a financial order to be submitted at the special town meeting. The order will be to seek to return all discretionary funds back to the control of the select board, where they can hopefully demonstrate some appropriate oversight. So as the great ex-Buffalo Bill Terrell Owens once said, get your popcorn ready.
Thank you. Amy O'Connor? Amy O'Connor?
I saw her. There she is.
Thank you. I'm Amy O'Connor. I live at 556 Laurel Street. I have 3 sons in the school district, 2 at Center and 1 at Williams. I am a nervous public speaker, very nervous. So, good evening and thank you for letting us speak. And thank you to all school committee members for all the time and dedication that you put into this. Because I'm not sitting up there, you are. I just wanted to point out a few key things that just keep jumping out at me. Like the fact that Dr. O'Shea has the full support of the Long Meadow Public Schools administrative team. I just think that speaks so loudly to me to have all members of the administrative team. And for people that don't know, because maybe I didn't know that a few months ago, that means principals as well as some other key players, but all principals. So I'm also struck by what really got me up here was the students that are coming up to speak. If they can do it, I have to be able to do it. So, and I've heard a lot of people say, the high school students, it's not just high school students. We've had middle school students up here. I think of my middle school son, and he's not brave enough to do that. But when I think of what it takes for those kids to get up here and speak to, an intimidating group of people, some people in charge, it really says a lot to me. So, and it's just been difficult. I think of them when it seems that things go unanswered or unacknowledged. I think mostly of the students, and that maybe they don't understand the parameters here, and that it's not a back and forth, and that's not what it's intended to be. But just why won't anybody answer my questions or tell me what's going on? So I just wanted to speak my mind about those key points, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I apologize, I don't want to get this wrong. Marlena, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Marlena Pitchell, and I live at 237 Green Hill Road. I'm here tonight because after witnessing last week's school committee meeting, I'm left appalled and embarrassed. This isn't directed to all members of the school committee. The minority opinion tried on numerous occasions to raise points of information and make motions that would ensure transparency as well as community engagement and involvement. These actions were summarily dismissed. It came to light that agenda items are not shared with school committee members before they are shared with the public. I can only assume that this is another attempt to cut out voices and retain control. These issues were handled with a lack of preparedness and understanding on your part. In my letter to the school committee sent on December 6th and posted online, I addressed 3 of these issues directly that describe contradictory behavior, a lack of preparedness, and a lack of understanding. It is clear that you did not do your homework prior to the meeting. How much is this charade costing our town, both financially and in community unity? The cost of outside workshop presenters to teach you how to be a school committee, the legal counsel you're seeking as a result of your actions, a vendor to assist in the search for a new superintendent, requests for police escorts. All are unnecessary when the majority of stakeholders, save 4 members of the school committee, are in favor of renewing the contract of our current superintendent. If our school committee was truly working in the best interest of our students, teachers, administrators, staff, parents, guardians, and constituents, all would have been avoided. The decision not to renew Dr. O'Shea's contract is a symptom of a greater problem. I agree with the Longmeadow Education Association's vote of no confidence in you, the school administrator's letter, and the countless other voices supporting Dr. O'Shea. Are you embarrassed by your egregious efforts to unilaterally make decisions not supported by your constituency and stakeholders? I know I am. Is it that you can't, don't, or won't see the damage you have caused and are continuing to cause? It is true that as a town we elected you, but everyone makes mistakes. Although you seem to be unwilling to correct yours, we'd like the opportunity to correct ours. Please resign so that we may elect people to the school committee that will operate in the best interest of all stakeholders. I implore you. Beth Barron, Stephanie Jasmine, Karen Morin, Melanie Rothstein, please resign. Allow our town to begin to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Rosario. Kathy Rosario.
In here. You know you're old when one of your former students is speaking. They have 3 kids. Good evening. As I'm sure you know by now, my name is Kathleen Rosario, and I am president of the Longmeadow Education Association. On the backs of the LEA t-shirts we wear is a statement, "Together we teach," which means no matter what role one plays in the district, we all teach our students daily. As a staff member of the Longmeadow Public Schools, we live the motto, "Eyes on the child, learning." These 2 dovetail extremely well naturally, as it is important to remember that not only do we all help educate our students, we lead by example. During the past month, the child's eyes have been on all of us. They are watching how we all individually have handled this tenuous situation. So on behalf of the Longmeadow Education Association, I am asking that you rescind your earlier vote to remove Dr. Marty O'Shea as superintendent of schools and instead offer him a 1-year contract extension to remain in his leadership position. As has come to light during this very contentious process, Dr. O'Shea enjoys strong support in our community, and the longer we can keep him as superintendent, the better off our schools will be. The process to remove and replace Dr. O'Shea has not been transparent and has eroded public confidence, as you've heard in the school committee. The LEA's vote of no confidence in this board reflects a feeling within the community that has led residents to taking up the work of establishing procedures for recalling elected officials, not a path anyone wants to go down. The very vote used to remove Dr. O'Shea stemmed from an earlier meeting that the LEA believes was held in violations of the state open meeting law, which, as you know, we subsequently reported to the Attorney General's office for investigation. This level of turmoil is not the example we want to be setting for our students. And believe me, as I stated earlier, and they have articulated, our students are watching. In health class, when students are taught the necessary steps to make good decisions, they are told the final step is to ask themselves how things turned out and if they need to rethink their decision. You are now at that point where you can rethink your earlier vote and move this process in a more positive and open direction. We all urge you to do so. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Michael Baresi.
Hi, Michael Baresi. I live at 164 Meadowbrook Road. Forgive me for reading. I just want to make sure I say it all correctly, but if I could public speak better, I would look at you all and, do this nicely, but Dear school committee members, I come to you tonight to speak my mind. I am very disappointed at the outcome of the majority vote to not approve Marty O'Shea's position, if at least for 1 year. I have stood here before you twice in the past and spoke with respect for you and the process. Unfortunately, despite these efforts by me and so many others, you have not truly listened. You have said you value our views, but really we have seen no action that backs that up. Approval for a 1-year extension would have been the compromise between your concerns and valuing our sentiments. So what now? How is a citizen who elected you all, who you are all actually accountable to, supposed to react? Well, my guttural reaction is that I'm mad. I believe in your actions you have undermined our school system and are directly jeopardizing my children's education, my kids. So it's gotten personal. Now, this forum of public discourse is not very amenable to true communication, so I am forced to go back to the recordings of your written statements and try to glean insight as to what is really driving your mindset in all this. Firstly, I believe you all. I do believe in your experiences with Dr. O'Shea are truthful based on your experiences. And that is why you have decided to not support his renewal based on the challenges you have had with his communication, perceived lack of respect and trust with you, the school committee. It is clear, though, that your decision was not based upon other aspects of his performance. My challenge has been to really distill your reasons for this. For instance, Mrs. Jasmine very briefly and vaguely states that the past vote for improvement was her main motive for no vote. She said little at that meeting, but if you go back to the hiring process of Dr. O'Shea, Mrs. Jasmine actually sent an email to me and many other people that she felt would listen. The sole purpose of this very lengthy email was summed up in one quote, and it was easy to find because it was bolded. Never have I felt more strongly that a candidate is not, in all capitals, N-O-T, right for the position of Long Meadow Superintendent than I do with Mr. O'Shea, unquote. It is clear to me that you have had it out for him from day one and have likely been doing all in your power to set him up
Mr.
for
Baresi,
failure.
I do have to interrupt you. It is not during public comment for you to address a specific committee member or talk in that kind of manner about a specific committee member. I would just need you to refrain from doing that in your remarks.
I will try to.
Point of order. We have stated to the public that this is a public comment period. He is making specific comments to specific writings and not to the member directly, recalling historical precedent that's already been set. As a point of order, I think you're out of order, Chair.
I do believe that he is quoting the thing that happened. I do believe that. I just want to caution you to not direct any of your comments to a specific committee member. You can direct to the chair.
I am referring to written statements that are recorded.
Okay.
okay?
You may continue.
Everything, 100% of what I'm doing.
Okay.
I do acknowledge that, and I understand that.
I just want that to be
requirement.
clear before
Oh, I appreciate it. And
hearing
if I
what you're
cross the
saying.
line again, feel free to.
Okay, go ahead and
If
continue.
I did, I don't think I did. So, let's see. So it is clear to me you've had it out from day one. So this member's had it out from day one and have likely been doing all in your power to set him up to fail. So based on that history, how can you criticize Dr. O'Shea for not trusting you all when this is the sort of animosity he literally walked into? As for the statement given by Mrs. Moran, I too listened to that statement, which I believe your sentiments to be true. But what has been repeating in my mind is one thing that you said, and I quote, "Many of you are asking me to replace my truth with your truth. You are asking me to throw away my countless hours I have worked with Mr. O'Shea, to throw away judgment, throw away my experiences, so that my judgment will conform with your views and experiences. I cannot and should not be expected to do that," unquote. I am sorry, but you are an elected committee member by us. It is in fact your job to not throw away your views, but certainly adjust and even go against your opinion if they are at odds with the clear majority of your constituents. That is what it takes to be an elected official. You represent us. And despite how you started your statement with how, quote, "seriously and thoroughly you have listened to the perspectives offered from key stakeholders," unquote, you have not acted on them by a considered balancing with your own. I will say Mrs. Moran did state some key points, which was actually the only one who listed a few job performance failings, such as lack of professional development, a lack of growth mindset, and more. But you failed, in my opinion, to provide any quantitative measures of comparison. Each of these metrics are measurable. How does he compare with past superintendents in all these areas? You want to win me over? Then prove it. Saying one is incompetent does not make them so. You have to prove it. And to Mrs. Barron's statements, your statement to Dr. O'Shea that, quote, you are accountable to the board, not the teachers or the community, unquote. This to me acknowledges you recognize the teachers and community are in full support of Dr. O'Shea, but again, you don't care about that. Only his interactions with you and the board. You want a superintendent you can control, not collaborate with. It goes both ways. Which brings me to Mrs. Rothstein's statements.
And I just ask that you can wrap up
I am
quickly
almost
because
there.
it's been over 3
One
minutes.
aspect of your statement that gets to the core of your decision-making was his evaluation process, rightly so. You stated that the key objective for Marty O'Shea's improvement was to, quote, increase trust amongst and between the superintendent and school committee and between school members and district leadership. According to the statement, you based your decision upon the evaluation subcommittee feedback and reality that Dr. O'Shea wanted an answer by November. My opinion, the fact that the only evaluations being made were derived from the feedback from the sub-evaluation suggests the feedback is really only coming from your school committee allies and thus biased against Marty. I say that because the sub-eval chair, Mr. Kelly, who is a principal himself, had only glowing support for Marty, so it certainly did not come from his feedback. But there is a glimmer of hope. You also stated the fact that he wanted to know by November, which means your decision was based on current data that may have been insufficient. Perhaps, if more time to collect more data, you could make a more informed decision. Well, if you could have, if you had just approved that 1 year continuation. One thing Mr. Kelly also said was that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees say that we will thrive to represent common interests rather than factions. We will make decisions that are best for students in all cases, all means all, unquote. I implore you all, please reconsider the decision. It is solely based on your relationship with the superintendent and not at all about the workings, his working relationship with everyone else. I believe you have set him up to fail in a biased process of evaluation. Some of you have had it out from the beginning. You want a superintendent you control rather than truly respect and collaborate with. Please stop this selfish decision-making for the best interests of the students now and later.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Knowlton. Mr. Bill Knowlton.
Hi, Bill Knowlton, 23 Edward Circle, parent, educator, resident. I would start by saying that being here is not something that I would like to be doing and not normally would be doing. But as a 25-year educator, I feel like being here is something that I have to do. And I'll try to be brief because I don't want to repeat a lot that's already been said. This board's blatant refusal to hear the voice of the residents that you supposedly serve has made me ashamed to call myself a resident of this town. The issues that you have with Dr. Shea from the outside look to be personal, petty, and insignificant issues. Hundreds of students have come before you in protest and you have ignored them. Residents have come before you, you have ignored them. Teachers and administrators have come before you, you have ignored them. Elected state officials have come before you, you have ignored them. Your own fire and police departments have come before you, and you have ignored them. The Longmeadow Education Association took the drastic measure of voting no confidence in you, and you have ignored them. All the aforementioned have called for your resignation in light of your inability to bring unbiased, fair, and impartial decision-making to this important committee. You defiantly continue to rush forward with a process that the entire Longmeadow community, clearly has conveyed to you that they do not support and do not want you continuing with. You believe that you are the majority. You are not the majority. You are, in fact, the minority in terms of your feelings. The chair of this board has repeatedly claimed that she has satisfactorily answered all inquiries regarding the transparency of the board's actions with respect to the aspects of this process, and no such thing has taken place. When members of your own board have presented specific resident-driven questions directly to you, your responses have been vague and evasive, at best. The actions of this board look to be hidden, they look to be orchestrated and self-serving. As much as the so-called majority of the board would like to convince the constituents here that the issue is resolved and that it is time to move forward, I feel I represent the teachers, administrators, parents, residents, and most importantly, the students who number in the thousands to inform you that this is not over. It will not be over until justice is served for Dr. O'Shea. It will not be over until this board finally recognizes and accepts the error of its judgment and takes actions that is right and fair. Finally, this board is teaching our most precious resource that we have, our students, how not to trust, how not to collaborate, and that it is okay to dispose of what you deem to be not good enough. You have taught our children that their voices do not matter. I have seen it in their faces. However, our children, our town, and its residents are resilient. You are accountable to us. Integrity and trust must be restored to the Longmeadow School Committee. The time for you to resign is now.
Thank you. Lynn Hopkins.
I'm Lynn Hopkins, 33 Dover Road. Franny Kress at 99 Oxford Road is unable to be with me tonight. She had an out-of-state commitment, and I'm here to speak for both of us and share our perspective as longtime advocates for our schools. Franny and I are among hundreds of parents who have worked for this system for the past 20-plus years. Our collective experience exceeds the experience that the school committee has accrued in your more limited engagement. Your inexperience with the cost, the pitfalls, and complications that occur when conducting a superintendent search was evident at the special school committee meeting on December 5th. This is not a matter to be taken lightly, nor one that should be considered when evidence suggests that the school system is thriving under the current superintendent's leadership. We are unable to determine the cause for your decision to non-renew. No relevant information has been shared with us, only personal feelings, which have placed unprecedented pressure on Marty, our students, our teachers, and parents. A search will be costly, disruptive, and divisive. We cannot support this search unless you provide us with compelling reasons to do so. We understand that Marty reports to you, and we hope you understand that you report to us. The MASC guidelines are clear on that relationship. And when you expend funds, you're expending our funds. We will hold you fully accountable for the decisions you make that fail to reflect the will of your constituents. Communication challenges exist between 4 members of the school committee and Marty, and they do not exist elsewhere, either inside or outside the system. Longmeadow stakeholders form a far greater majority than your slim majority on the board, and your decision to non-renew does not reflect what the majority in this town want. In your evaluations of Marty, you state he has done well in many critical areas. Despite that, you are basing your non-renewal decision on the following, and I paraphrase. Marty does not communicate with you. He fails to follow up. He's abrupt. Interestingly, these assertions bear a striking resemblance to the way we feel about your communication with us. Our evaluation of you follows. You're not listening. You are non-responsive to questions. You communicate poorly. And you are abrupt and vague in your discourse. And whether or not your complaints about Marty have basis, these weaknesses are ones that you absolutely display. This search is being forced upon parents, students, and teachers who neither want it nor support it. If it is pushed through, there will be a future where the voices of those most ill-affected by this turmoil will have been ignored. A future where the gift of experience and leadership that we now enjoy with our current superintendent will not be replaced. A future where merely 4 individuals single-handedly dismantled a school system that was not broken. A future where school committee members rely more on MASC guidelines than their own friends, their fellow parents, their children's teachers, or the great majority of their constituents. You are forcing us to embark upon a superintendent search when 20% of the communities in Massachusetts are simultaneously conducting similar searches. This is not a benchmark that we want to be part of, and it will impact our ability to locate and entice a viable candidate to consider our community, especially given the very divisive nature of your decisions. Smart, educated Longmeadow citizens know that we can find better solutions that support our mutual goals if we work with one another, not against one another. We will work with you as long as you agree to work with us. Currently, the foundation of our schools is intact. We want it to remain as it is. We want Marty as our superintendent. Since there has been no good reason offered to support his removal, and evidence actually supports the contrary, we contend it is long past time to check egos at the door and work collaboratively. Politics and personal feelings have no place in this discussion. Everyone must be fully engaged. We can do it. We will support both you and Marty as you work together to improve your relationship. Give our community and our school system the benefit of one more year. A one-year renewal so that all of us, including your own board, can unify. We encourage you to rise to the challenge.
Ms. Hopkins, can you just make sure that you're
I've got
wrapping
about
up?
3 sentences for
Thank
you. Okay. We encourage you to rise to this challenge. Fellow parents are asking you to do so. Your own friends are pleading with you to do so. And a town-wide majority of constituents are demanding that you do so. Let's all be part of a positive solution, one that makes everyone look good and supports our goals for the school system, our obligation to our students and teachers, and not insignificantly, this rational use of limited tax dollars. Give Marty a one-year renewal. It's just plain smart.
Thank you. Karen Stark. Apologies if I get the last name wrong, but Paul Salento. I don't know if it's hard C or soft C. Paul?
Paul, no? No, okay, not here.
Okay, thank you for checking. Sheila Kelleher Abad?
Oh, me.
Oh, Sheila, yes.
Thank you, and I apologize for getting up last time. I didn't know.
No worries.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm a very nervous public speaker. So, and anybody that knows me knows that that is very true. I first just want to say, I'm freezing up, and I apologize for that.
No, take your time. Take your time.
I just, I have many roles here, and I guess I want to individually point them out. I first want to say that my first role is a homeowner. I've been a homeowner for over 20 plus years here in Long Meadow, paying taxes, which I'm still doing. I've been able to raise and very blessed 4 sons, and the second role with that being said is I've been blessed to have them in the school system from kindergarten through 12th grade. So with that being said, I've had the ability to see them firsthand go through the programs from kindergarten through 12th grade and watch all the programs that have been available. And those programs have included everything from academics to the highest of levels to all of the special educational needed programs that were needed as well. So again, my sons now are in their 20s, and again, that's 20 years of education that I've been able to be a part of. And my third role here in Long Meadow is being the school nurse, substitute school nurse for the last 2 years. But the biggest advantage I have is I'm able to have all 6 schools. So for me, I have the advantage of being in the elementary, the middle school, and the high school. So again, for me, I say I have the advantage because I'm able to see in the last 2 years since I've started here all the programs that Marty O'Shea and his team have been able to develop. And I don't know how many times I have personally spoke with Marty and Jean Fontaine and commented on just so excited about the development of these programs that are available to the children today and how excited and proud I am to be a member of Long Meadow and a taxpayer, and seeing how these children come into me every day, whether it's in the elementary school or the middle school or the high school, and just, again, throughout all of these years. And it's heartbreaking for what I've seen in 2 years of all of the development in the schools in the last 2 years, and a 20-year veteran, to think that this could all be gone. I just think it's a shame. But again, I want to thank you all for listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila, for coming. Mr. Kevin Shea?
Kevin Shea, 64 Warwick Street, father of 2 high school students. I want to start off by going back to last week. You were all here for a team building exercise. Spent a significant amount of time talking to each other, talking about the protocols you want to use and how you want to act as a board. It's amazing to me how disconnected that was from reality. Amazing. You talked a lot about how you want to behave, how you want to communicate. How you want to communicate, you talked about collaboration. It's amazing to me the lack of collaboration over the past 6 months when there were communication problems between you and the superintendent. There was no collaboration. It was, Marty, you need to go and get better. We don't need to work and get better. There was no mediation. There was no accountability for it's a two-way street. There was no collaboration. You talked about how you will communicate with respect and dignity. You've heard tonight that almost every speaker feels a lack of respect for the way that you have treated us and the decision that you made. I'm speaking to the 4 members who voted for non-renewal. We don't understand your decision. You've not made it clear to us. The most clear thing I've heard is there are some confidential incidents that we can't know about, and if we only knew about those, we'd understand it. If that's true, why did 3 members of the school committee vote to renew? If it's that bad, why wasn't it unanimous to not renew? That leads all of us to believe that there's nothing there. You also spoke last week about what happens when things go wrong. How do you know when you're off track? Isn't it obvious? Right? Everything everybody's saying, you're off track. All of the people who are attending, all of the people who are emailing you, everything that's going on, you are off track. You need to recognize that. I applaud the chair for recognizing that you were off track in trying to limit comments in previous meetings and that you have not done that tonight. I'm very happy about that. I want to remind everybody that 3 members of this committee voted to shut off public comment on November 14th. And if they had been successful, we would not have heard from parents, students, a former member of this committee, and our state representative. That was shocking to me. Finally, at the meeting last week, we heard a presentation about selecting a new superintendent. On the screen was presented qualities that we might look for in a new superintendent. I went down that list. Not surprisingly, the person sitting at the table with you checks off every one of those things. You're off track. The person we need to lead this district is sitting at the table. Offer him a renewal.
That concludes our visitor comments for this evening. I do want to thank everyone for coming and commenting. I took definitely, I think, oh, were there other sheets that I didn't get? Let me check before I,
I've looked. Oh, it might be in. Okay. We'll look.
we're good? Okay. All right, so that concludes visitor comments for this evening. I thank everyone for coming and speaking. I do want people to know that I took about 5 pages of notes regarding things that were said and questions. So I don't want anyone to get the perception that I was not attentive. If I was not attentive, it was because I want to address the things that were said to me. So we'll continue with school committee announcements and recognitions for this evening.
I have something, excuse me, that I'd like to read. Thank you. I want to talk about something that was online and put forth from this committee. And the first thing I want to reiterate is some comments that Armin made a few weeks ago when he was talking about the possibility that children of these committee members are being harassed and bullied in school. That has to stop. That's completely unacceptable. The children, our children, have nothing to do with this, and if that's happening, if any of you know of that, you have to help make it stop. Second, I want to address a specific line in the Post. It said, "Our district and our students deserve better. I believe that is why the senior majority of the school committee could not vote to renew the superintendent's contract." I would like to remind everyone that I was elected to be a school committee member, not the junior varsity, somehow inferior to people elected earlier than I was. My vote, in my opinion, should not be demeaned or insulted in an effort to drum up support for yours. I base my vote on what I have seen and heard in my time on this committee, and as I stated previously, I see an admin team, a teaching staff that is functioning well and dedicated to improvement. I consider the superintendent's #1 job to be guiding the administrators and teachers in improving the teaching and learning in our district, and I would like to point out that the school improvement plans were presented at a recent meeting and everyone here supported them. I also have had no issues communicating with the superintendent or any of these principals at any time. And last, I would also remind everyone that I have 20 years of experience in education. Bronwyn has 20 years of experience in education, and Armin served on this school committee previously. He is not junior. None of us are junior to anyone. Last, I would like to note another line from the Post. We know that these sentiments do not represent the majority of residents in Long Meadow, and I appreciate the many messages and calls of support for the school committee's decision. This line seems to indicate knowledge of the majority of residents in Long Meadow's feelings and support for this decision. I would like you to cite your source, because I have not seen the data that indicates this. You shouldn't state that you have the support of the majority of the town's residents unless you can prove it. I'm not claiming to know how the majority of voters feel, and I don't claim to know how the next election will go. But I would suggest that everyone stop making statements about knowing public sentiment unless you have the evidence to prove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Armand?
Sure. So first off, I would bring attention to the Wolf Swamp-based Boy Scout Pack 295. The fourth graders in that den, the Weeblo Den, made cards for the Holyoke Soldiers Home. We will be delivering them next Monday night. Thank you, Wolf Swamp, for sponsoring us. We really appreciate it. Secondly, congratulations to all junior district auditioning musicians. And typically this is middle school up to 9th grade. Everyone in our group from Long Meadow of amazing musicians who auditioned were accepted into the orchestra for the concert in March. So congratulations to all those musicians, and I know they put a lot of hard work into it. That's my warm and fuzzy. Now I get into just something that really irritated me last week. It is as a disappointment that the director of the MASC last week felt he needed to engage in dialogue with our taxpayers in a very insulting manner. I directly stood next to him and heard his comments in which he was questioning the motives of taxpayers in this town towards their sincerity towards their actions in that meeting and in previous meetings. So if you saw me having a conversation with him over there that got a little heated, it was because I called him out on it and told him I felt that it was insulting, and he shouldn't be talking to our taxpayers that way. I could tell you in his comments after, he says he's seen this movie before, and you know how it ends up and people move on. I can tell him without any hesitation, I will never forget those comments or his actions that day. He also said during the meeting that it would be no problem having a search. Of course, I said easy, and we rolled back the tape, and he actually said no problem. Interestingly, a week before, he failed to disclose to us that he told Natick 60% of districts are looking internally because, as I quote according to the local newspaper, there is a lack of qualified candidates. His no problem to me doesn't seem to be no problem when he's talking to a different district. So I would have a problem engaging with MASC in any way, shape, or form based upon the representation of the director. Lastly, we have the open OML complaint. If it's upheld, the information used in that complaint could be fruit of the poison tree, which cascaded towards another meeting at the evaluation subcommittee meeting, which then played a part into the school committee vote on the non-renewal. I believe it is in the best interest of this committee that we withhold from making any further decisions on going forward with anything on the superintendent search until the OML complaint has been fully adjudicated. Thank you.
Bronwyn?
I agree with Armin and some of the people that spoke about holding off on the superintendent search until the open meeting law investigation is complete. I also would like to say we received an email from the Long Meadow Public School administrators, the whole team, asking to meet with one, a few, or all of us. I requested an email to the chair on December 6, 2018. The following item be placed on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Meet with the Long Meadow Public School administrators at the December 11, 2018 school committee meeting. This item was not placed on the agenda by the chair. I'd like to make a motion to the committee to include this item on the agenda tonight so we can develop a stronger relationship between the school committee and the Long Meadow Public Schools administration.
Seconded.
We have a motion that's been first and seconded. We don't have full committee in the room, but I'll open it to discussion. Bronwyn made the motion. Did you have anything that you wanted to speak to the motion, Bronwyn, since you made the motion? Typically, the person that makes the motion gets to speak first.
Thank you for the clarification. I wasn't aware of that. I would just like to say that we did receive a very specific email from the administrators who all are in full support of Dr. O'Shea, and I don't think we can ignore that any longer. They provided us 4 options, and none of those were met, which is why I felt as though I wanted to put the item on the agenda for this evening. There's several of them here. I'm sure they would love to engage with us. We talk about building a stronger relationship with them and being more collaborative in our approach. And I think it's important that we do that, and the only way to do that is to actually do that. We can't keep talking about it and saying, we'll address that later. We'll address questions later. We'll address this later. I think it's great that people are taking a lot of notes when the citizens are talking, when the administrators are talking, but I haven't heard of a lot of people getting answers, and I feel as though the admin team, as hard as they work, as many hours as they put in, they deserve to meet with us tonight. We shouldn't put it off any longer. They deserve our time.
Did you have your hand up before, Armand? Did you want to?
I did, but it can't be said any better than that, so I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else? Discussion? Okay. I would just like to clarify some things in your statement. First, the superintendent and I met on December 4th to set the agenda for tonight's meeting. Karen was present at that meeting, as was Diane Jorgantis. So the agenda was already set on December 4th that morning when we met with Dr. O'Shea. You had emailed me at about 1 o'clock on December 6th.
The agenda has been amended before.
Bronwyn, may I finish?
Oh, I apologize.
Okay. You asked for a meeting agenda to be placed. It is the discretion of the chair to discuss it with the superintendent. It doesn't mean because it didn't go on tonight's meeting that it can't go on a future meeting. I had advised you at that time that I had reached out. I had had discussions already. Some discussions were ongoing. Since you've brought this up, I will read the committee in on some of the responses. I am about transparency. If you want some of the answers, I'm happy to let you know that I reached out to Kathleen Rosario. We had a productive phone conversation. I reached out to Sue Bertrand. We have a talk scheduled for next week. I reached out to Donna Hutton as the senior member of the leadership team. We did go back and forth. Just to summarize, she wanted to reach out to the admin team before she responded to me. While she's been the spokesperson for the team, she shares a strong and united commitment to our work. I'll just summarize. The purpose of the meeting, sorry, there's a glare on my phone, is to discuss the perceptions that were stated regarding the admin team's relationship with the school committee under Marty's leadership. We feel that this dialogue has not occurred, and we want the opportunity to understand members' understandings, and we want you to understand our understandings as well. We'll frame our thoughts for comments on Tuesday, which I believe Dr. Guile and Mr. Landers successfully did, and look forward to a forum where we can build understandings and solutions together. I find one-on-one conversations helpful too. I would value a meeting with you as well as a group meeting that the team feels is needed. It's a complex time for everyone. I won't go into detail. Mrs. Hutton says, I'm grateful for the day-to-day work with students. I want you to know my response, and you should have this. Thank you for my response to Mrs. Hutton. Thank you for your response. I have some time today to talk if you'd like to schedule a time about the concerns and issues you've laid out. I've been committed to building relationships with the administrative team since I joined the committee, and that won't change moving forward. I let her know that with regards to the meeting tonight, statements are more than welcome at public comment period, but the committee is following regular protocols and not responding to comments. I have again, this is my email to Mrs. Hutton. I have a strong interest in further workshops with the administrative team, and I'm committed to any productive time that can be spent repairing relationships as we move forward. As spokesperson for the leadership team, perhaps we can partner together and remain in communication as to the timing and topics of any future workshops. My time in the next month or two will be committed to the superintendent search and our budget process, but I want you to know this is a high priority for me as well. I'm meeting with Sue Bertrand next week and look forward to setting up a separate meeting with you if today doesn't work out. Mrs. Hutton graciously replied to me today, "Thanks, Beth. Let's work on something for next week. The statement will frame our admin team's questions and points we're hoping to discuss with the board." So this is all ongoing. I have been communicating and reaching out.
Point of information, what was the original date that you said the agenda was set?
We set the agenda on December 4th.
December 4th, okay.
Yes. So I don't want people to get the impression that I am not reaching out or not communicating. These things will happen, and they are happening, and they are happening productively. So I feel I did need to read the committee in on that response, because that's something that's gone back and forth with myself and Mrs. Hutton, myself and Sue Bertrand. I had a very productive phone call with Kathleen Rosario. So these things are happening. I don't want people to assume. We get into a very dangerous place when people start assuming things. Do not assume that these things are not happening. These things are happening. I don't know what else to tell you about that. Armand?
So the request from the admin was very specific. There was 4 things they asked for on December 5th, the day after the agenda was set. 1, schedule a special SC meeting with a specific agenda focused on the dialogue before December 11th. 2, schedule a separate meeting before the December 11th SC meeting with 1 representative that voted to renew Superintendent O'Shea's contract and 1 member who voted to non-renew. 3, schedule a separate meeting before December 11th with 3 representatives, a meeting with members that will not violate open meeting law. 4, administration statement to be read at December 11th meeting that conveys their insights. The request did come in the day after the agenda. As Bronwyn points out, we have amended agendas in the past as long as it becomes before the date of posting. These 4 things were specifically asked for, and they were not agreed to. The administration, in my eyes, deserves better than that. The back and forth is not what they requested. They requested 4 specific actions. We should have done 1 of the 4.
Anyone else have any comments to make? Oh, Karen.
Just to address, I completely agree that we do need to talk to the administration, we need to listen to the administration, we need to have that meeting. But when you're talking about the time frame in which that was requested, agenda was set on the 4th. I'm not exactly sure what date that email came in, but posting, getting everybody available for those meetings, the time frame is very, very slim. So I think it's a little bit unreasonable to expect that these types of meetings can be thrown together with an agenda posted that quickly. I do think Beth is making every effort to reach out, and I appreciate that effort, and I appreciate the effort of the admin to reach out to us. And the meetings are getting very difficult with this kind of back and forth, and I'm just hoping that we can somehow move forward and just try to listen to each other and really see what's actually happening here.
Thank you. Bronwyn?
I know that moving forward is maybe easy in some people's eyes, certainly not in the eyes of others, and certainly not in the eyes of every single person we heard from this evening. The students that emailed us their letter. So I don't think moving forward is as easy as some people want to make it. And I'm personally, how I voted being irrelevant, I'm personally very uncomfortable just continuing to just move forward without acknowledging answers to these people's questions. Students, everybody. I just am having a really hard time with that personally. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. I think that it looks like we're just ignoring what they're saying, and I'm sure they're very frustrated, and I personally am having a hard time coming to terms with that.
So I would say thank you for your comments, and oh, sorry, Melanie, I didn't see your hand. No,
I just want to add also
Everyone
with
should get a
regard to that
chance.
time frame, that did involve a weekend. So from the 4th, 5th, 6th to the 11th involved a weekend, which makes it tricky as well. And I also want to add that Dawn and I have also been in contact with one another to have discussions.
Anyone else?
Beth, if I could?
Yes.
We're all here tonight. The 7 of you are here, the 10 of us are here. Let's have the conversation. We talk about transparency, let's talk. That's what we're asking for.
Or make a commitment to give us a date for us all to meet with you.
We can make a commitment.
Or make a date now.
No, that's fine. Bronwyn, I do want to acknowledge that I think the point you made is talking about where people are at with this, and I do acknowledge that. I do acknowledge that people are at different points in this process. I will reiterate that I have open lines of communication. I am willing to meet with people. The reason we didn't meet, I will state very clearly, the reason we don't meet in little subgroups is because we all do represent different quorums of subcommittees. I need to be careful of that. The reason in one of the 4 points to pick somebody from the no renewal and somebody from the yes, that to me that's like, I can't contribute to something that's going to be further divisive. That we're a committee now. We made a decision. The committee acts as a body. We move forward with that decision. I'm not going to be a part of any continued divisiveness in terms of separating us out in terms of yes or no. But I will continue to work forward and find a date, whether it's a workshop but I don't feel that conversation should be happening tonight because we do need to move an agenda along. We do have guests coming. I don't feel, I'm not saying I think people are misunderstanding and thinking that I personally am opposed to this or maybe the committee is opposed to it. It's not opposed. I acknowledge that you made the request. We'd already set the agenda. That doesn't mean I'm saying it can't happen at a future meeting or a future time. I'm not saying that at all. I just want that to be very clear.
Okay, but you also said that the next month or two is going to be super busy with our search.
Right, it
So
doesn't
that
mean
kind
that
of-
can't happen. There's a lot of things we have to juggle as a committee.
Okay. I mean, I still made the motion to have the discussion
true.
tonight with the administrators.
There is a motion.
And you, I appreciate your wanting to be transparent and wanting to meet with them. The vote's out there, so if you do want to meet with them, I love that statement.
Did you,
I agree with you.
Karen?
I'm just to keep with total consistency, I don't know how we have a motion to add something to the agenda that's not normally on the agenda.
When I met with Glenn Kuchar last week, actually prior to this meeting, to complete my charting the course requirements, he answered some questions for me, and one of them was about this, and I said if I ask to put an item on the agenda, and it's not, the chair has the right to say yes or no, which I totally understand, you know, what's the follow-up? And he said the follow-up is to bring it up at the next meeting and to ask the committee to vote on it. If the committee agrees to put the item on the agenda, then it gets on the agenda.
On a future agenda.
He didn't specify a future agenda.
It's a future agenda.
Which go ahead.
Can I just get some clarification as to what you're looking for? Are you looking to discuss Dr. O'Shea's performance, character, behaviors, things that would go? What are you looking to discuss with administrator in open session? Because we would have to be in open session and it would have to be on camera. What exactly are you looking? Are you looking to air everything out there? Are you looking for pieces?
I was actually, there's no ulterior motives here. I was just actually looking to listen to what the administrators have to say and see if we can have a dialogue. We talk about one of the main reasons people didn't vote for Superintendent O'Shea to come back is because he didn't do a good enough job communicating. So I feel as though, we should be doing that, and the administration is ready to do that. And so no, I'm not wanting to have a discussion about any of that. I'm just wanting to listen to what the administrators have and open up dialogue and create a stronger relationship with them.
The only reason I'm asking is I just want clarification. My silence is in part because we're not dissecting an issue or a policy or a budget. We're talking about a person, a human being, and I'm cognizant of that. And what I say in my, when we're talking about this, if you're looking for issues that I have, you can look back and you can see concrete examples. I was specific.
I'm not looking for anything like that.
I'm talking about when people are asking questions about why I came to my decision. You can look on the eval. Those are concrete, not communication. There were concrete examples based on performance. I asked about character because you have to be very careful when talking about a person in what you discuss in open session. So when we talk about a dialogue with administrators and having a discussion, it's not about a policy, it's not about the budget, it's not about a program, it's about a person. And so that's why I think that the options were given to not have a quorum and do it in public. And I think that was the request from administrators.
Armand?
I keep hearing this about if only there's this thing you just knew you would be there on the other side, and I haven't heard that, and I haven't seen the concrete examples, and all I can say is that, again, going back to the specific request, it was 4 specific requests of the people who we work with almost every day on all issues. And we're being dismissive of it, and we're hiding behind policy and procedure, as opposed to just having that open dialogue with one of the 4 specific requests that the admin team asked for. It just doesn't seem right to me.
I'm just going to go to Melanie first, and then I'll go to you,
It's been less
Stephanie.
than 7 days. I would not say that anybody here is being dismissive about that suggestion.
Can all dialogue go through the chair, please? Point of order.
Armand.
Point of
Melanie.
procedure. Thank you, sir, for the help.
What would you like me to look at?
I
don't understand
acknowledge
what you're
Melanie as
requesting.
the speaker, so Melanie, you can continue.
I think she's made it evident that nobody...
But we are, I will say that we need to be very clear about when we talk, we are talking about something germane to the motion that's on the table or the issue. We are not going to sit here as a committee and poke at each other and debate each other. We're not debating personalities here. We're debating the issue.
Okay. And I think that you made it clear that we have not dismissed this. Many of us have reached out. We are looking for the proper forum. You do have to be very careful about what you speak about in open session. There are things that have to be done in executive session. Nobody else out there understands those processes, and nobody is dismissing this. It's been less than 7 days since that request was made, and I don't feel that this is the proper place and time to have that discussion. I'm more than willing to sit down and have that discussion with the administration. I would love to do that and fulfill one of their 4 requests. I don't feel like, for all the reasons that have been stated, and none other than those reasons, that should occur here and now.
Move to call the
Thank you.
question.
Bronwyn, did you want to restate the motion?
Sure. I would like to make the motion that we meet with the Longmeadow Public School administrators at the December 11th, 2018 school committee meeting, which is this evening. Thank you.
And Armand had seconded the motion. So we do have a motion on the table that the school committee meets tonight with the administrators. Any further discussion?
I move to call the question.
Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote on the motion.
I have if we're going to vote on you moving, we'd have to vote on you moving the question, because I had something I wanted to say. But
Okay.
we can vote on that.
Okay, so let's take a vote on moving the question. All those in favor of moving the question? Any opposed? So the motion fails. Stephanie?
So I just wanted to make a statement, and then we can do the motion. This is just getting crazy. All I wanted to say was, you're new to the committee. You weren't here during the executive sessions last year and everything that took place, and you're not privy to some of that information. I met with every single administrator at the end of the spring, looking to give it that chance, looking to, with the permission of the committee and Dr. O'Shea, I met with every administrator. And I had that discussion because I was really, last year I heard the voices, and I said, we're going to give this more time. And we did. I met with the administrators. We put a subcommittee together. A mutually accepted experienced mentor was hired, and really looking to give it this time. So I did. I don't want anyone to think that I've just been a stonewall. I really gave it a lot of effort and a lot of time, and I would never make this decision. No, I'm knowing it's an unpopular decision by these people if I didn't feel strongly. I mean, this is not a position I would ever wish on anyone. I have advocated for the kids in our district for year after year. I've been on your side. I've been at the school committee for years, feeling like I wasn't heard when I was advocating for full-day kindergarten, when I was here talking about the achievement gap, when I was here talking to the school committee about the policies on social media to protect our students and our teachers. I've been there. I have felt not heard. I've been disappointed. But I'm on this side, and it's a very different perspective to be over here. And the information that you have as a committee member is very different than being on that side. But I've been both sides. And I just want you to know that I have not just shut down. I really have been working on this for well over a year. And I've worked with Dr. O'Shea, and I've had those conversations, and I've had the conversations with admin. So to think that I'm just up here right now, shut down, I'm not. But this has been going on for almost 2 years.
Karen?
I do not think that we I don't think that this motion is correct. I don't think that you can add something to the agenda the day of the meeting. I think that it needs to go on a future agenda, and my understanding is that you need to vote to put it on a future agenda. You cannot add things to the current agenda.
I apologize. Can I make a motion to get this on a future agenda, please? Amend the motion?
Yes, you just state your amended motion.
I'd like to amend my motion, and have this meet with the Long Meadow Public School administrators at a future meeting with the school committee. The next meeting, please.
Second.
January 8th.
So we have a motion to amend the motion to have this meeting at the next meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. It has been seconded. We'll open it for discussion. Seeing none, we can vote on that motion. All those that are in favor of the amended motion to have a dialogue with the school committee and including the administrators at our next upcoming school committee, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so I will work with the administrative team. That motion passes, whether that's a workshop, however it works out, we will coordinate and we will get that done.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to our next order of business. Oh, that all came under announcements and recognitions. Did anyone have any other announcements or recognitions?
Can I do one quick one?
Quick one.
The amazing, but can you do this, Lego robotics team based in Long Meadow, but has students from other schools, made it to states this weekend. They placed high enough in the Western Mass tournament, so they'll be going to Worcester on Saturday. It's actually absolutely thrilling to watch Lego robotics for 8 hours. It's my pleasure to do so. So if you can cheer on any of those kids, led by the great Lee Allentuck, they did a fantastic job. Thank you.
Thank you for adding that. I just wanted to add my final recognition because in your packet, we do have the Student of the Month recognition for CTEC, and I know that that was noted in as correspondence earlier in the meeting, but I looked at it and I just wanted to make sure. I think one of our students was accidentally not highlighted, and I wanted to make sure that Joseph McDonald received recognition as well. I believe there were 4 students, so Joshua, Joseph, Austin, and Charles. I want to make sure they all receive recognition because I also want to note that today the Student of the Month breakfast and dessert was held at 9 o'clock and 12:30, and one of these days I'm going to be able to get to this because I always am, calling recognition to CTEC, and I feel like I can never go because of my work schedule and attend this, but I feel like I'm going to make that a priority to get to that. But I think that recognizing those CTEC students is important, and I just wanted to make sure Joseph wasn't overlooked. I'd also like to wish all of our winter student athletes success as they start their season. Good luck to all of our musicians and choral groups who are participating in their upcoming winter concerts, and also to overlap on the robotics team on their success as well. So congratulations to all of those students. We will move the agenda along this evening and go ahead with our business with guests. So we do have our NEASC reaccreditation overview, and I'd like to welcome Principal Tom Landers to come and present to the school committee on that process.
So as Principal Landers and Science teacher Mike Cameron are settling in, just a quick intro. We're excited to support the high school as it begins to immerse itself in the New England Association of Schools and Colleges reaccreditation process. A bunch of years ago, there was a sort of mini uprising among principals and superintendents where the NASC was began to listen to the concerns of high school administrators around making the process more meaningful, streamlining it, and making it fit with and be consistent with school improvement planning efforts. So this is different than the NEASC process that perhaps you have experienced in the past. It's a strengths-based approach. It's an approach that allows for the development of a vision for our graduates, and it's a process that will fit in nicely with the school improvement planning process. So tonight, to give you a brief overview of that process, we have Principal Tom Landers and steering committee member and science teacher at the high school, Mike Framerin. So I'm going to pull up the, unless you're able to connect.
If you have it right there.
Sure, okay, gotcha. Give me 1 second. Set that up for you. All right, so to give you a little orientation to the process and the standards that we're working or holding ourselves accountable to, Tom Landers and Mike Framer.
Thanks for having us. So I want to introduce Michael Framer, science teacher. I also want to acknowledge Meredith Laughlin, math teacher and math department chair, and Mike and Meredith are co-chairpersons of the committee. As I said in an email that I had sent to the committee a week and a half ago or so, every single Unit A member in some way, shape, or form has to be involved in this process. It's a 10-year accreditation process. It begins now, and it goes through 2022 with our final visit. They've changed the process a little bit, and they have 2 visits. They used to have 1 culminating visit. They have sort of a formative assessment, if you will. They give us some feedback, have us some work on some things, and come back in 2022. So we're anticipating 2 visits, and Michael will walk through the timeline in a moment. I want to take this opportunity just to have one more plug for our Vision of the Graduate survey. I had sent out a direct message to all LHS families last Friday. Marty O'Shea had sent it out to all LPS families. We thank the town, Stephen Crane, for putting it on our website. We thank LCTV for running advertisements about it. I want to acknowledge that we ran it on, thank you Diane for running it on LPS Facebook, and for Jim Moran with longmeadowbiz.com for friending it, and on their Facebook page, advertisements at Stores Library, the Senior Center, and we also dropped off hard copies at the Senior Center if that's more user-friendly. But I just want to use that, if you're listening at home, if you could please take that. It should take you less than 10 minutes, and that is the information that will give us some data as to Vision of the Graduate, those competencies, those skills that we're asked to look at, prioritize, and then build most of what we're doing off of that. So there's my plug. We want to go over what the standards are. The standards for the 2020 accreditation are different from the current ones, so we have those up there. Michael will walk through a little bit of the timeline and some of the rubrics that we're going to follow, and hopefully we can give you a brief understanding, a better understanding of what we're about to embark on. So up there you can see our standards. So these standards are new. They're going to be first implemented in 2020. We are considered a 2022 school, which means their decennial visit will be in 2022 at some point. They won't tell us until this spring when they're coming. So different from the last accreditation process, there's 5 standards as opposed to 7. And what you see on the right column are what are called foundational elements. And the glaring thing that is new is under Standard 1, the vision of the graduate. We don't have that currently. So as I'll talk about later, that's what we're kind of focusing on this year, is creating that. You can flip it, Marty. Yep. So just some quick background. The rubrics for those foundational elements are real simple. It's meets or don't meet. That's kind of what we're working towards, is to make sure that we do meet them.
Go to the next one, Marty. This is the rubric for all the other principles, not the foundational elements. There's many. There's 5 standards, and each one has 7 or 8 sub-principles. As you can see, the rubric for these are kind of, it's more of a spectrum. So you can flip it again, Marty. So just to walk you through kind of the timeline of what we're working towards in 2022. So first off, we are a 2022 school, which means the decennial visit is in 2022, but we're not sure yet if it'll be the spring, which would be the spring of 21-22, or the fall, which would be the school year of 22-23. They haven't yet told us that. So what you see here kind of assumes a spring visit, which would be earlier. This would be like the earliest. So this year, our first goal is to create the vision of the graduate, which is why that survey is out. Part of the process is to collect all, yes, as all stakeholders are engaged in the process, so that survey is our way of doing that. So we've broadcasted as many ways as we can think of. And that survey will run until Monday,
December 17th.
And we've gotten good feedback so far. This year we're also going to revise, and we've begun the process to revise our CVB, our core values and beliefs. And then in the spring, me, Meredith Laughlin, and Tom will be attending a accreditation seminar hosted by NIESC that they'll invite us to. 2020 is a big year because we're going to host what's called a collaborative conference. That's new in this process. It's a much smaller group than the decennial visit. It's 4 to 5 people as opposed to about a dozen. They'll be coming and they'll be helping us complete our self-reflection. They're going to come up with a growth plan collaboratively, us with NIESC. The next year is to implement that growth plan, and then in 2022, they're going to be coming. We're going to write a report, and as Marty said, it's kind of an ongoing cycle. The idea is to grow and to learn and to adapt. I can switch again.
The self-reflective study, as Mike's preparing to talk a little bit about the VOG, just as I said in the email, it's going to break down everything we do. What we do, how we do it, why we do it that way. It is going to require us to be reflective and self-critical. There's also going to be a larger, much more in-depth community survey put out through Endicott College. They run it. It would take probably 20 minutes for people to take. We'll put the full court press on that to get as much information, feedback, and input as possible. And I would anticipate coming back maybe later certainly after the new year in 2019 when we get some information on the VOG, and also really on a regular basis from here on out until 2022 to keep you in the loop and keep the public in the loop that's watching.
So these are our 2 goals this year. And the first is the vision of the graduate. So just to give you a little background, that's how NIESC defines it. So our hope is by June of this school year, we will have a vision of the graduate. We will collect feedback from the community to create it. We're in the process of doing that. We will have a logo, and we have 2 art teachers have volunteered to help us design a logo for the vision of the graduate once it's actually created after we get the results from the survey. And then also not to create a new CVB, but to revise our CVB. We currently have one, but we're revising it, and that'll be done by June of this year as well.
And the core values and beliefs, there's a definition there, but it really is about the essentials of what are the foundational aspects of what we teach, how we differentiate, how we make sure that all students have access to the curriculum, how we make sure that we're doing a good job. So it is a way, the vision of the graduate is our vision, and our CVB is one way to reach that vision. and what goes on a daily basis in the halls and the classrooms of LHS. I guess I would say one more thing about the vision of the graduate. After Michael is right, after we create a draft of that, I think that what I plan to do is after the new year, the survey ends on December 17th. We would, in the month of January, maybe twice in January, maybe once in January and once in February, we would make ourselves available at Long Meadow High School, advertise this, and we'd show a draft version of the vision of the graduate. But it would also be a listening session as to, if we've identified that this is the vision, what input from the community should we consider as to how we get there? And I alluded to this in the email, but NEASC is pressuring high schools pretty unapologetically to make sure you do what you do really well, reflect on it, like I said, but also to challenge yourself that you're going above and beyond, and you're creating new opportunities for students. We sort of envision it to be seniors. They're older, they're more independent, they have transportation. Create a variety of ways where students can synthesize their learning, pull what they've had together for the last 3 years, and create something or experience something with the real world, connecting what they learned in the classroom to the outside community. What we have been talking about internally is we are committed to that, but we're also committed to making sure that we're practicing differentiation. We're looking to create opportunities for students, but not necessarily more mandates. What is interesting and intriguing for one student might not be interesting and intriguing for another student. So if more to come on that. I don't want to go too far down that road, but I want to let you know that that's something that NEASC is pushing. They're prioritizing, and we're in dialogue right now about how might that look. And the examples I think I gave in the email were that might look for some students like a capstone project. That might look for some students like a portfolio defense, when they pull their work together and from that they form a thesis that they have to defend. That might be an internship for some students. That might be, we saw some interesting examples when we went to the conference. One student wrote a book. I don't think many students will write a book, but if you have it in you to write a book, God bless you. And I think that would be a creative way to allow a student to sort of take his or her education to that next level. But we're in dialogue about what that would look like, but I did want to let the committee know that we heard that loud and clear when we went to the conference, that those are the kinds of things, additionally to what schools are doing, that they're looking at. Anyway.
And just one last thing, the survey that's out there, so it was created, as Tom just mentioned, 4 members of the steering committee attended a conference a couple months ago, and that helped us kind of figure out ways to engage the community and to develop the survey. And then we also had an outside company consult us while we were creating that survey. And that's pretty
So that's a brief overview. We will keep you in the loop. We will answer any questions right now if you have them, but we wanted you to know generally and keep this on everybody's radar. NEASC will remind us that their accreditation process never goes away. You kind of have to do something every 2 years, but it's really ramping up at this point. And it's kicking in now with PD, with the vision of the graduate, with the rubrics that we need to create this year, as Michael said, and then next year our PD is really going to be focused on that. The good news is the current PD that we're engaging is certainly applicable and transferable to what NEASC is asking us to do. But they're asking us to quantify what we do and do it with a little bit more purposefulness and making sure that it aligns with the things that we're going to have to prove within the next few years for NEASC.
Thank you. I'll open it up to questions right now. Go ahead, Ryan.
The core values and beliefs discussion, how is that process? Who's involved in reviewing that?
So that is, the vision of the graduate is through many, many, many stakeholders. You bring that back, and the CVB is from the faculty and staff. How do we do this? How do we take that and live it every day in the school?
And we've also gotten feedback from faculty in faculty meetings, and then also we sent out a survey as to how we can revise it. Again, we're not creating a new CVB, we're trying to revise it. But our focus now is to create the VOG, and then the CVB is how as we as a school kind of implement that. So,
Great. Thank you.
I think the feedback from the VOG will help.
Right.
Anyone else have any questions? Bronwyn?
I just had a comment to make. I know that Mr. Landers had sent an email to us previously outlining the NEASC process, which I really appreciate. And I think it's important for everyone to know that you'd mentioned that all the Unit A employees are already engaged in NEASC.
So right, they're about to be more engaged, but they're engaged in the sense that Michael and Meredith this summer began to work on choosing people to serve on one committee and identifying their strengths. So it is true, every single Unit A member has in some way, shape, or form to serve on a committee, to do some writing. The principal cannot write this report. The principal has to serve on the steering committee. But I cannot write this by myself for reasons of ethics. That I can't say that I've written a 100-page report and everything's wonderful. So it's, as I think I wrote in the email, NEASC cares about both end result and process. And they want to make sure that the stakeholders have input into things like the vision of the graduate, and that the faculty and staff have input, and then specifically the faculty in the Unit A perform certain duties, serve on certain committees, gather information, etc.
Which we really appreciate, because that's all in addition to all the other work that the teachers are already doing, which we know is a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Armand?
So the last go around on this committee, one of the deficiencies was the school itself.
Right.
And we were able to organize and rectify that deficiency. Is there anything like that glares that you need assistance from this body to address that would be like a community-wide financial policy?
I think that if there's anything glaring that we think is not good, we're currently working on it, but I think that what we're going to need from this committee is help with the logistics and some flexibility when it comes to helping us figure out how we break out from the traditional. And again, we're envisioning seniors to allow an increased number of seniors to have some freedom and some non-traditional opportunities to experience something else hands-on in their senior year. We do that right now, community service learning. There was a dialogue, 10 years ago, should we require everyone to do community service learning? Larry Birdie at the time quantified that 99-point-something% of the seniors had a really impressive amount prior anyway on their own through all kinds of volunteer work, whether it be in school or whether it be through churches or synagogues or private organizations. So we chose to go with an opportunity, not a mandate, and at that time we got creative, and we came up with, we had lawyers look at permission slips, and we talked to parents, and I think we have to look at that model and build on it. Because I think we're going to, if we really want to embrace it, and we really want to offer students interesting things to them, to say everything that you've learned in school, but how do you take it and apply it to what you're personally interested in? I think we have to be willing and ready to say, yes, for some students it might be that you go to an insurance company and see what really happens, or a law firm, but I also think we have to be prepared to have somebody go out and see what a plumber does. So I think that there are going to be different ways. So I think that's the kind of help that we're going to need from the committee in terms of logistics and thinking outside the box and flexibility and making sure that our kids are safe, but they're also not in a bubble.
Karen? Thank you. This is really helpful to understand the whole process, and I appreciate that. And I just want to echo, I do appreciate all the extra time and energy that staff and administration and everyone is putting into this. It's so interesting, and I'm really looking forward to hearing the process. Just curious on if they've talked a little bit about with that flexibility and with some of the programs you've talked about, portfolio defense, write a book, internship, do you envision that sort of in, as like an independent study, or how would that work?
So there's some examples of that going on right now in CSL, Community Service Learning, and in independent studies, and through some other examples. Right now, as I sit here, I would envision that has to be, that would be an interdisciplinary effort. It doesn't, I don't know what department or departments that would fall into necessarily, but I think that there's got to be some kind of home base, at least semester class, where even though you're not necessarily maybe in Long Meadow High School at all, or for the majority of that time, there's somebody to check back with. There's somebody to make sure that the logistics are worked out. You are where you're supposed to be. You need that human adult oversight. So I don't really know, to be honest with you. It's taken different forms at different schools. The ones that we've looked at so far, I like the flexibility. I think some schools are saying everyone's going to do a capstone project, and in that they're assigned to a class, and then they have some independent time. But while that might be an excellent opportunity for some students may not like that. They might want to challenge themselves in another way. So, but I do see that there's got to be some kind of formalized connection with an adult being in charge of X number of students. And the ask has said that they don't expect us to schools to have every single thing worked out by the time that they come, but they want schools to add this, or more accurately, embed this into what we already are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Breggy.
I was listening to what you're saying. I was thinking we had a project in economics, or we're having it right now, where we have to go interview any like local business owner and see how they make capital investment, and compare to that to like what the book says on reasons people choose to increase their capital investment or decrease their capital investment. So I thought like that's like pretty much what you said applied to like a smaller like class thing, where you're like learning about like the real world and how that connects to what you're learning in the classroom.
Absolutely. And there are examples like that all over LHS. And how can we enhance it? How can we build on that? How can we create maybe some new examples that we're not doing? But Mr. Flanagan and the business department is front and center in the dialogues that we're having about what this might look like, because they are already doing some things like this in their department.
Going to mention a couple things. So what I like about the vision of the graduate process is it really allows us to identify what works for us here in Long Meadow, and as opposed to some sort of cookie cutter approach to reaccreditation. So you really can identify what needs to grow and be nurtured and supported here in Long Meadow, and the NEAS process will allow us to do that. So I appreciate that about the process. And the thing that Tom and I have chatted about is that we want to make sure that this vision is not sort of developed in a silo, that that our graduates are a product of what happens from pre-K through 12, and so we want to make sure that vision is something that can be supported by the entire administrative team. So we've had some conversations as an administrative team about this VOG project. I think it's critically important that we work on it as a team so as to support the development of kids that meet that vision when they walk across the stage each June at Symphony Hall. So this really will need to be a unified project that we're all engaged in with the school committee, with the administrative team, and with the community. So the more we can do that, the more we can realize that vision. So.
And one other thing is, it's also something that needs to be measured. So it's not just something that it's not just a statement of we want our graduates to look like this. We're actually going to create rubrics to measure it at the high school level. So.
Thank you for adding that at the end. I think that was an important piece that I was glad to hear at the end. Did anyone else have any comments? I would just say again, thank you for coming. Thank you for the detailed email. I think you've made, it's very clear that we'll be engaged in this process over a long period of time. So whether that looks like future presentations, or I know you'll at least, you're very clear in the emails. I know you like to lay everything out, and I'm appreciative of that. So just being looped in and knowing where we are in the process, what's happening, be curious to see the VOG survey results, and I'm sure we'll hear back about that. But thank you for taking the time to give us the overview and lay it out for us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.
So now we'll move into the administrative reports for the night, and we'll lead off with the superintendent report.
So there's a few items on the report that was written and provided in your packet. I'd like to start by discussing the Say Something Anonymous reporting system. So there's only a couple of districts in the state of Massachusetts that I'm aware of that are using this anonymous reporting system. And so, just as Tom described how we're sort of at the leading edge of the reaccreditation process, because not many districts have gone through it. I think we're at the leading edge of providing opportunities for kids to submit anonymous safety concerns through this Say Something anonymous reporting system. It's part of the Sandy Hook Promise suite of safety tools, and I think my understanding is Boston Public Schools is going to be piloting this year. So we have students in grades 6 through 12. I think it's important for the committee to know this, for parents at home to know this. Students in grades 6 through 12 are going to be oriented to the reporting tool at some point in January at school assemblies. But they'll be oriented to the tool, but also oriented sort of to the mindset, to the approach of see something, say something. So it's as important that we create that culture as it is that we have this reporting tool. So. Appreciate the principal's efforts sort of coming together and embracing this anonymous reporting system. So, and that fits in with the next item on your report. December 7th, we had a district safety team meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mazza, for pulling us together there. We talked about a lot of things, staff safety training, notification systems, but most importantly, reunification planning. We're going to be involved in some tabletop exercises with public safety tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, so bright and early. We'll be engaged in that. Also, we had an opportunity to be briefed by Chief Dearborn on Tennessee Gas Pipelines Company's interest in establishing a metering station at Long Meadow Country Club. Not a lot to report other than to say that I think we walked away from that conversation confident that town officials, particularly Chief Dearborn, Town Manager Crane, are really closely monitoring that as it makes its way through a federal permitting process. So the chief has promised to keep us apprised of that, and we'll do the same with the committee. NEASC accreditation, we already talked about that. Superintendent's Corner, I had taped ask everyone to look for a video where I sat down with Paul McNeil, a couple of local physician, and a professor from Western New England University. We talked about pain management in teenagers and alternatives to opioids. So thanks to Dr. McKee, pain management specialist from Bay State, and Dr. Gila Sabetti for assisting us with that program. FY20 budget, we will be ready for a finance subcommittee meeting on December 17th. Admin has begun to discuss its priorities for FY20, taking a look at enrollment, staffing, programming, contractual obligations, and then some of the discretionary items that fall below those obligations. So December 17th, finance sub. Calendar committee, follow-up to discussion from last school committee meeting. There was a consideration of the 1920 calendar and the placement of parent-teacher conference days. So the principals are actively gathering some feedback from their stakeholders. And we have a calendar committee meeting scheduled for December 18th. So we'll probably be in a position to bring back the final 1920 calendar recommendation at your first meeting in January. That's it. I'd also just, Ms. Maz and I haven't had too much of a chance to talk about it, but he had sounds like an interesting meeting of school business officials earlier today. Talked about the adequacy of the foundation budget. I think that's something that we need to talk more about, in terms of the adequacy of Chapter 78. Obviously, Long Meadow's not as dependent on Chapter 78 as some communities, but I think, certainly if that source of revenue to the town were increased, then it would be of benefit to the school district and the town as a whole. So we can maybe talk more about that at the December 17th Finance Subcommittee meeting as well. So that's all I got. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Seeing none, I will move on. Thank you for the report. I will move on to chair report. I do have some comments. I had said some of this earlier when there were more people in the room, so I'll just kind of summarize, I guess. But I did want to assure those listening and watching that I have heard your comments and letters, but I also recognize in my role as chair that it's an obligation of the committee to move forward once a vote is decided. But I do want to express my sincerity and my desire to lead the committee in a very transparent way through the superintendent search process. I recognize there's room for improvement from our last 2015 search, and that's not in any way to lay blame on that search committee or that committee at the time. But I think it's our intention to provide the community, with the information that they ask for in regards to the search process. Some questions I have already answered to individuals through email and personally, and some we are all just going to have to learn together as we go through the process. Some things are simply unknown until the committee is allowed to deliberate them as a body. So please be aware that I have had various conversations, which I mentioned earlier, with various administrative staff. I am cognizant of that and working on those meetings, and everyone has been receptive to them. My role as chair will be to set upcoming agendas that'll prioritize our search and not put the district at a disadvantage by starting our search later than any other communities. But we will also be focused on our work in adhering to the budget timeline in preparation for the budget approval process. In terms of information happening on a local basis in the district, I did want to let the committee and let the community know that I did have outreach from a parent in town regarding the Tennessee gas pipeline, and I wanted to let people know that I did meet with this parent on Friday, November 30th, and I was very encouraged by this because I didn't have enough information about the Tennessee pipeline project, and I feel like if I'm going to be aware of something as a chairperson of a committee, I need to gather all of the information regarding the process and the project. So I would applaud this parent because I think they're probably a rare bird because this doesn't affect this parent directly or his family. They're not they don't live in the vicinity of the pipeline, but I did welcome the opportunity to meet with him. He's an environmental chemist, very well informed. We decided to, instead of emailing back and forth and having coffee, I walked the site with him, so met at Long Meadow Country Club, and I just needed a visual on where the metering station was. So it was strictly informational, but I learned so much about the pipeline, the role the metering station plays, and the proximity. My concern as a committee member was to meet in terms of the proximity to Wolf Swamp for our staff and our students. So I found it to be very informative. As Dr. O'Shea said, the town manager and the superintendent are monitoring that process. It was nice to be able to get all of that information so that I can answer questions if they're brought to me from parents. The town is monitoring it. There is an upcoming meeting. I believe it's December 13th of anyone interested in finding out more about the gas pipeline project. So I just wanted to bring people up to speed on that had happened. And then I think I would just finally close my chair report with just saying, since this is our last official meeting before the holidays, I would just encourage people to take time with family and friends over the holidays, really focus on what's really important in life, and just find the time to rest and recharge and relax. And that concludes my chair report for tonight. We will move on to student representative report. Greggy, I don't know if there's anything that you...
Yeah, I don't have anything different than what you said.
Perfect. So we'll move on to our subcommittee reports tonight, and we can lead off with Mr. Mazza and Finance Subcommittee.
Sure, there are a couple items on your agenda for consideration. We met on Monday, December 3rd. Just want to quickly highlight a couple items that were on the subcommittee agenda that were discussed and informational. First is regarding the middle school lunch monitors. School committee approved earlier this year the hiring of 2 monitors at each middle school. We've only so far been able to hire 1. This was done to hopefully expand the offering of recess more often than we currently could accommodate. So we do have 1 person now assisting the school personnel in each of the buildings during that time. So it is happening more frequently, but not on an everyday basis. Regarding high school athletics, we will be adding boys volleyball in the spring. It was on the finance sub-agenda primarily because we anticipate that it will operate at a loss, at least initially. So we wanted to make sure that finance sub was aware of that. They were provided a copy of the draft management letter for FY18, the independent audit that was performed on the financial operations of the town. There are a couple findings regarding the schools that were responded to and will be included in the final letter. And then in regards to the FY20 budget, just on the timeline, it was tentatively agreed that we would present the budget to the school committee on January 23rd, which is a regular scheduled meeting, with the hopes of having it approved on February 12th, which is also a regular scheduled meeting. We will need to schedule a meeting sometime in between, so it will have to be either the week of January 28th or February 4th, in which we would have to hold a public hearing, which is a requirement, and we do annually. So just in terms of planning out that time frame, just so the members of the school committee are aware. The 2 items for consideration tonight, the first is a building use request that was recommended by the finance sub, which is a request from ADC Arts Corp for use of the high school auditorium and classroom on June 17th, 18th, 19th from 4:30 to 10:30, and on June 23rd from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And this is for a dance recital.
So we do have a recommended motion on the facility use request.
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the facility use request from ADC Arts Corp. Artistic Dance Conservatory for use of the LHS auditorium and classroom on June 17th, 18th, 19th, and 23rd, 2019.
Second.
So the motion's been first and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we can call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes.
The next item is just the budget transfers for grants and special revenues. We talked about it earlier this year. There were a couple questions. So finance sub, we had an opportunity to have some dialogue and address any concerns, and there was a recommendation to approve.
And we do have a recommended motion for that as well.
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the budget revision as outlined in the document titled FY19 Grants and Special Revenues Amendment Number 1, dated October 22nd, 2018.
Second.
Motion first and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we can call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, Tom, for all of those updates. We can move into Policy Subcommittee.
So we have 3 policies that are currently, that continue to be posted for the 30-day time period. Policy KEB, KEE, which will be removed once a public comment has finished, and policy BEDG. To date, I don't believe we've received any comment. However, it sounds like Marty may have had some discussion with Kathy, in which he will follow up with me to see if we need to regroup in policy sub.
Any further discussion on or questions, anything? Okay. Seeing none, thank you for the policy subcommittee update. We'll move into the ongoing business on our agenda tonight, which does include the superintendent search. The next natural step in the process for us is to prepare an RFP. We need to decide and discuss as a committee. I did get some general idea from the last meeting that people on the committee felt like they wanted to move in the direction of the RFP process. So I'd like to open that up to the committee, and Tom Mazza is here to answer any questions as well. Chad, would you like to join? Sure. So Mr. Chad Thompson is our procurement manager in town. I apologize, I don't have a name with the face. I know that there's been email back and forth, but I didn't realize.
Yes, I'm the...
But thank you for waiting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hanging out.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I'm Chad Thompson, procurement manager for the town, and what I do for the town and also the schools is I ensure that purchases made from town and schools are compliant with laws. There's laws that regulate how you purchase things. And so for the school superintendent search consultant, the law to follow is MGL Massachusetts General Law 30B. And since it's a process where you'd be evaluating based on qualifications, as part of your process, you do an RFP process. With an RFP process, you receive separate technical proposals and separate price proposals, and you evaluate the technical proposals separate from the price proposal, and you score technical proposals, and at that time, that's when you open up price proposals. So part of the process of an RFP is basically determining your scope of work that you'd like the consultant to do. So you'd outline all that so everybody that receives the RFP knows what's expected. And as part of the evaluation process, you'd establish minimum criteria, and that might be, for example, they have to have 5 years experience doing search consultant work for other school districts. And then you create comparative criteria so you can score their technical proposal, which is like their resume, of all the criteria you're asking from them. So you create all these criterias and evaluate, put a score with them. Some of the criteria is kind of quantitative. So, for example, you might give a high score to a contractor or a proposer that has completed 5 searches, and you might give a lower score to one that has only completed 1 search, for example. And then from that, you receive proposals. The process for soliciting proposals is for 30B, you have to advertise in a couple different legal notice publications and post public notices, and then those notices have to be listed for a minimum of 2 weeks. That's the minimum. Sometimes for a proposal like this, if you're customizing, you might want to make it a little longer so people can prepare their proposals and get it to me in time. Basically, I'd be the contact for the proposal and the receipt of all questions and the delivery of the proposal, and they have to be mailed to my attention by the deadline. And once it's received, there's an evaluation committee that would be predetermined that would review the proposals. And the evaluation committee is usually a combination of staff, probably school committee members, and also some residents could be on that committee. But that would all be predetermined before we'd start the process. And then once I receive the proposals, those proposals would go to the people that are on the evaluation committee, and they would only receive the technical proposal portion. And we would you would have time to review them, and then we'd have a meeting to finalize the scoring of the technical proposals. if there's interviews are desired, anybody that meets any proposer that meets all of the minimum requirements, they would all be invited to an interview. And that could be an on-site interview, or it could be, we could also accommodate remote interviews through technology. And basically, once you've scored all the technical proposals and from all those that are evaluated as being qualified, meeting the minimum requirements, then at that time, once those scores are all tabulated, and we have a ranking of the technical proposals received, then at that time, that's when the price proposals are open. And then basically, since it's an RFP process, you would award to the contractor that has high experience, that has a price that you feel is advantageous for the services received. Any questions on the process, or?
I appreciate that overview. I
Sure.
know it's a lot of information for people to take in. I would open it up to questions or clarification if anybody has anything specific they'd like to ask Chad. Yes, Ryan.
So we were given the RFP example from 2015. Were you here and a part of that?
Yeah, yes, I was. Yeah.
Thank you.
Karen?
So is it possible, I mean, is this sort of like a standard document? Is it possible that we can use this document?
Yeah, that can be used as a model to update for the new one. We don't have to keep everything the same. So you could change the scope of work. You could modify the evaluation criteria. Yep. So.
Does anyone else have any questions? Stephanie?
The evaluation criteria, how was that determined? Was that a past committee? I'm just curious, like highly advantageous is the proposer has completed 5 or more successful school superintendent search processes. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that's like the highest rating. So was that a committee, or is this just a template? And
that at this point it's a template, and that could be modified to what we think is important to us, or what we feel is a reasonable quantity, or what you consider as highly advantageous. Basically, there's different categories. There's highly advantageous, advantageous, not advantageous, and so you just have to have categories. And some of the questions are quantitative, so you're evaluating based on actual deliverables that these consultants have completed, and other questions are more evaluated based on your opinion of their performance based on their proposal.
Tom, did you have anything that you wanted to add to?
No, I think if you're looking at that, as Chad indicated, there are minimum requirements which are different than the comparative.
Right.
So any proposer that answers or meets all of those would automatically be moved forward in terms of their proposal would be submitted to the evaluation committee that will then review and make a recommendation.
That's right.
Any other clarifying questions? No?
Maybe about just the timeline, Chad, how long does the process usually take, would you?
I would probably say about, once we have valid authorization to proceed, it's probably about a 4 to 6 week process, because first of all, it takes about a week to submit that legal notice for publication. Obviously, the time to prepare the RFP, to have all the content you want as presentable to present to proposers. So then, as I mentioned, the minimum lead time, waiting lead time is 2 weeks. And then from that point, when you receive the proposals, you have to have time to review it. And if you want to have interviews that, so last time we had people come to the interviews, And a lot of these consultants are national consultants, so it's a good idea to give at least a week, a little over a week, so they can get reasonable airfare if they choose to come. Some of them will choose to come. And then from that point, it's basically just scheduling, a final evaluation to score the technical proposals and open the price proposals and make an award decision. And then from that point, there's the contract, so that would be completed. The contract is part of the RFP, so everybody, all the proposers know what the terms and conditions are. And then the contract is signed by a representative from the school for the department, and then it's also signed by the town accountant, who validates the appropriation of funds, and then it's signed by myself to ensure that it's compliant with the requirements of the law, and then it's signed by the town managers, who is the chief procurement officer for all departments.
Thank you for that clarification. I had a question about the interviewing of the actual vendors once they submit a proposal. That is not a requirement?
No, it's not a
How does that
requirement.
work?
It's something you could choose. But one thing with the whole RFP process, it is not a public process. It's only for those that are part of the evaluation committee. And upon completion of the award decision, that's when all the information becomes public. So public can get copies of the proposals and our scoring and the price proposal. The only thing that public would be able to get is obvious things like financial statements or confidential information like social securities or things like that. But so the interview process with the selection of the consultant, that would also be for the those involved with the on the committee, the review committee.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just in terms of the process, the evaluation committee would recommend an award. The full committee would have to vote to authorize it, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
It would work similarly to our subcommittees, how we move
Correct.
things up from subcommittee to the full committee. Stephanie?
Is it done in executive session and subcommittee? How is it not public? It's in sub.
You're asking in terms of the committee that would be reviewing the proposals.
Because it would be a subcommittee, which has to be public.
I don't know if that I can answer that one. I don't know if there were more than 2 members last time or not in terms of the evaluation
But
subcommittee.
even 2 members is a subcommittee.
Yeah.
If it's made at the direction of the committee. So it would have to be an executive if
Yeah.
if the proposals can't be public.
It sounds like it would have to be an executive session.
Not sure that's an exemption under the law, though.
I'd have to check on
We'd
that.
have to check on that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bronwyn?
Oh, thanks. Did you say that Stephen Crane is responsible for signing the contract once we select the vendor?
Yeah, for all town departments with the charter, town departments and school department, Stephen signs contracts that are 10,000 and above, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And also, he authorizes all POs, including school POs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would ask that, I appreciate all the information. Is it okay to say that any questions going forward on the process, we are able to email you or?
Sure.
Okay, just wanted
That's
to
fine.
open that up and make the committee aware of that, any questions going back and forth.
Sure.
And I would think that if I were to ask you a question, I would just share it with the committee. But I thank you for the
Sure, you're
for all the
welcome.
information. Appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you.
It's good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
So hearing some of that information, I don't know if there's anything that the committee would like to deliberate or discuss. I'm here to facilitate a conversation, but I certainly don't want to lead it. Karen?
We had a motion last time on the table for going with the RFP. Can we revisit that?
Absolutely. Would you like to create a motion?
Sure, I would make a motion to go the RFP route.
Second.
We have a motion that's first and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'd call for a vote. The motion is all those in favor of going with the RFP process in terms of the superintendent search. All those in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, the motion passes in the affirmative, so we will engage in the RFP process to secure our vendor for the superintendent search. Any further comments or questions in how that process can be facilitated or moved forward? Stephanie?
Well, I had been going back and forth between doing a subcommittee for this and then doing it with full committee in the spirit of just having everyone aware of what we're looking at. But now it sounds like maybe not everyone can be aware of the proposals, which in some ways makes sense given that these, they're competing. So I don't know, it would be helpful to know whether it needs to be an executive session regardless, in which case it might not matter whether we do it. I think it's nice for everyone on the full committee to see all of the material, given everything that's going on, and so in some ways I would just opt, but then scheduling is more difficult. I don't know how people feel, but, you know.
I think I'd be interested to hear any opinions on that or discussion. Armand?
I guess with Chad still in the room, I guess
Sure.
the question is, could that be the full committee? Is there any issues against that?
I'd have to check.
Okay. Because if not, I totally agree with Stephanie. I think it would be best to debate it as a full committee.
Anyone else have anything to add? I would actually agree with both of you. I think that we are not required, we have no policy nor is there any law that requires us to form a subcommittee. And I feel like this is a very emotional issue in our town right now, and it is one that is calling for transparency, and I do want to be cognizant of that. I want the public to have the information as we have it. So I am in favor of not bringing this to a subcommittee. I'm in favor of all of us sitting here, creating the RFP, working through it, looking at the proposals. So I guess the only question becomes, we can sit here and work on an RFP together, and then I guess we'd have to ask the question about, in terms of what happens when those proposals come back, if we have to meet in executive session. If I'm understanding it correctly, we would not need to meet in executive session if we opted to, and I'm saying we'd have to discuss this as a committee and vote on it. But if we wanted to move forward and have all of the committee do this work, we could essentially, and I'm going to reach out to you, Chad and Tom, we could sit here and go through the previous document and tweak and adjust. We would just need to be aware of when the proposals come back, that you receive them, and then once we are scoring and reviewing them, the question is whether we do that in executive session or not to protect the confidential information in the proposals. Just want to make sure I'm...
Yeah, I'll have to check into it. I'm actually not sure. I've never had it happen where a whole committee wanted to, so I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, appreciate that, Tom.
Well, I'd maybe suggest, Chad, you look into, if we put in the body of the RFP that the proposals will be publicly reviewed, then the vendors know that it's going to be done in a public setting, so that whatever information that is proprietary.
Part of the issue with that being public and why it's private is that for example,
Chad, you might want to come up to the microphone because I can't hear you at home.
Sure. Well, I do know that part of the reason why it's not public is that if it were public, the very first person that has their interview would be at a disadvantage because they would be the first one, where like the last person that received their interview, or if their evaluation, they would know what was discussed, so that's part of why it's not public, but.
If I could follow up on
Yep,
that.
go
Could
ahead,
you
and
ask
then
the
I'll go to
Inspector
Stephanie.
General if we don't have interviews and it's just a review of the technical proposals?
Yeah, you can do that. You don't have to do interviews. Interviews are optional. But if you do interviews, they have to be for everybody that meets the minimum requirements to make it fair. So, you're not singling out some vendors and not others. But you don't have to do interviews.
Okay, thank you. Stephanie?
I would expect that they wouldn't want us to do it in public, because they'll have a bid out to us, and they'll have one to the next town, and they're not gonna want their bid to be,
If I could, I think it all becomes public once the award is made anyways.
once it's, yes, but in the process, I don't know. Does all of the bids become public, or just the one that's awarded?
They all become public.
At the end, after there's a award recommendation, it's all the proposals.
So it's either we do it all in public, they're agreeing to it, or we just meet in executive session for that one part, and then it becomes public anyway, so the information will be known one way or the other.
I was just going to add that I think interviews would be helpful, just my opinion.
I appreciate your opinion. I would disagree with that because I feel like the last time we did a superintendent search, they didn't interview. It certainly isn't necessary. I am worried about a timeline. I do want to make sure that we are positioning our district in the best possible way to find the prime pool of applicants. So that is something that I'm always thinking about. In terms of interviews, I do feel like when we send out for RFP, there's no telling how many people will respond. I don't anticipate, it seems when I've researched this and looked at just within our own district and other districts, the number is usually like 4 to 5. So we could certainly, I want to be very clear and aware that I don't want to, if we can review a proposal on paper, I really don't want to spend money flying people in or driving people. I'm very hesitant about that part of spending money for that. I'm not comfortable with it. I'll just say that. Stephanie?
It may be something, though, that we could potentially keep open when we go through this, though, if we set like dates and if we could do it remotely.
Remote,
because
I
there
could get
may
behind.
be, yeah, there may be some questions, because I think something, there were some things that went wrong in the last one, and I think in some ways they wish that they had done an interview. So it might be just to keep that open if we can do dates, and then we could, there's always, it doesn't necessarily have to be in here, but if we can, get them on the screen or something and ask those questions, then maybe.
Yeah, even if it was remotely, I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, or even on the phone, maybe.
Yeah.
Just seeing stuff on paper and then actually interacting with the people could be different.
They had the dates on the last one set, so we could maybe figure that into the timeline so it wouldn't push us out, if that's that's it as a concern. You want to do it within a time frame,
Right,
for sure.
The time frame is definitely. Tom?
Just on the interviews, we don't normally incur the cost
Oh, we
for
don't.
them to
Okay,
come and
good to
present.
know.
We make it very clear.
It's on them.
Available.
It's in here somewhere, but I couldn't find
Okay.
it that quickly.
Any cost incurred is on the firm's expense.
I am appreciative of that because I certainly don't want any misinformation out there, and I certainly don't want to spend any unnecessary money, but I am appreciative that you brought that to our attention, because if it's on them to incur the cost, then I'd want people to know that. Armand?
Thanks for that, because that was my question, too.
It's good to know that.
The only other thing would be just allowing the public to weigh in on the RFP criteria before we take any kind of vote, or start creating the document, because I think the input would be very valuable, and we said we would do that.
I'm not sure exactly how you see that. I see the community input in terms of once a vendor is secured and there are surveys and focus groups. I'm not sure, I don't know if Tom wants to speak to when this document was created. I can't speak to how or when or why the public was a part of that process. I wasn't on the committee at the time. We're all learning this.
Yeah, I think, other than the evaluation committee, I think the public was more and probably involved once a contractor was selected with, because part of the scope of work from the previous RFP that was determined that the consultant would provide was, for example, developing a community engagement plan and having 4 to 7 meetings. That was like one of the criteria. So they were involved with facilitating events and promoting it to the public to ensure, to find out what was important to the community, things like that. So it was important that they were involved with communicating with the community to get their feedback.
So we don't involve the public in the RFP process to secure the vendor. What we would want to ensure is in the scope and service that I think we would all be in agreement that we definitely want that level of community engagement in terms of what they're offering, in terms of focus group surveys. We really need to be looking at a cross-section of our stakeholders, those types of things. We would make sure that's defined in the scope.
And as far as the content of the RFP, that's all public information, like the actual document once it's released and as a release date and it's released for 2 full weeks, that's all available to anybody. The actual document.
Armand?
The other thing I would just add back is I think we've heard loud and clear from multiple residents that they have an issue with spending money on this search at all. Spending money is within the scope of the RFP, and I think their input would be very valuable. That's all.
And I would agree that I've heard that, so I think that would come into play as we score and evaluate proposals when they come back. I would want everyone we do have a responsibility in terms of the money concern there, so I would hope that everybody would be, whatever direction we take in terms of how we look at the criteria, I would hope that would come into play with people. Anyone else have any comments or anything while Chad is at the table? Thank you for the clarification on
You're welcome.
the other matters. I guess we will touch base in terms of the executive session question.
I'll check that out.
Check that out in terms of if the full committee would like to not just work on the proposal, but then what happens when we receive them.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
With all of that information, do you have anything else you want to deliberate in terms of the RFP? What are people's thoughts? I think I've heard that we'd all like to work on it together and not go the route of the subcommittee. We just need the clarifying point, obviously, about what happens when we receive them as a committee. I don't know if anyone, I feel like, did I give everyone opportunity to speak to that? Because I don't want to misrepresent if somebody feels like we need to go to subcommittee route. So I would feel that as a committee, we will embark on the RFP as a committee. We'll all work on it together. It's up to the committee. I would open it up to when you would like that to happen. Maybe Tom, you could speak to like how much, I went through it. I know there's definite timeline issues that we would need to, those things need to change. But obviously I would want the committee to go point by point and agree or disagree as to the content. But I don't know if you want to speak to
I think
what needs to happen to get it ready.
I mean, I think the scope of service, obviously, we can't advertise it until it's completely finished. So the scope of service will be the most crucial part, as those are the deliverables, the expectations that the committee will have for any proposer that ends up getting selected. In regards to both the minimum and the comparative criteria, I mean, those can be changed based on, the will of the committee. If they want to increase the number of successful searches as in terms of how they fit in terms of the ranking, that most certainly is something that can be adjusted if there are other factors that members would like to see as part of the evaluation. There also usually is a reference check in terms of calling districts and other entities that use their services to get feedback, not only of the references they provide, but other districts that they provided service to that maybe they haven't provided as a reference, just to see if the information they provide seems to cut across all of the various clients that they've used. I think another important piece is, have there been issues with previous searches? And if so, were those contracts canceled? And if so, to provide information and following up, I think, with those districts or entities also in terms of the issues surrounding that process of what happened and why it didn't work out. So we most certainly had challenges with the consultant that we used the last time.
Did you say they did or didn't do interviews last time? I didn't catch that.
I believe they did not do interviews for the vendor
Okay.
that they ended up going with.
That's my recollection.
Anyone else have any follow-up for Tom or direction that you want to go in terms of how we approach this? Stephanie?
I looked through this. There were some things that I might change, and then obviously the timeline has to change. I don't know, in terms of the criteria, if it's, as he said, there's all different ones to market. It just seemed like 5 was like, it's a search firm. I would hope they've done more than 5. So I don't know if you bump that up, but then I don't know what, it just seems like the bar is low on that particular variable, but then there are other ones that you're rating anyway. So I don't know how people feel. I mean, this is what they sent out last time.
We might consider successful searches in Massachusetts, or having a vendor who is knowledgeable of the Massachusetts laws and procedures that need to be followed. Since they don't necessarily align state to state in terms of the requirements. I don't believe that was in this last one specific to Massachusetts.
And that was a problem with one of the candidates, correct? That the license didn't translate, or the certification didn't translate to Massachusetts.
There was some issues.
So yes, that would be good to include then.
And I would say in terms of the technical part of the proposal, I guess number 1, saying the firm has national experience. I would just recommend that maybe we just put national and state. I don't think, we don't need to.
Or we want to make sure that they have state Massachusetts
Right.
experience.
I want
it
people
sounds
who
like.
are, I think, well-versed in our community and also in how things run in Massachusetts law in terms of like open meeting law. You should never incur any legal expenses with a superintendent search, and I am not looking for us to be doing that. So I think that's important, an important piece to put in. However we want to state it, I think it's important that I don't think we need to go just say national. It's not like we need to look out in California or
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Is our goal right now to go through this and have one tonight prepared? Well, I mean, we can't finish it because we don't know the answer about the executive session factor. But are we going, and no offense if you're involved in writing this, but there are so many really dramatic errors in the way that this was written that I think it would take a while. Just pointing out there's lots of problems. So are we doing it tonight? Is that what we're doing right now? Or are we just chatting? I don't know what we're doing. So I'm asking.
I would open that up to debate, whether you want to do it right now or just ask general questions about the proposal that we have in front of us and how we can rework it. Stephanie?
My guess is because we didn't know if we were going with a subcommittee or full committee, and I think that probably people haven't reviewed it if they thought that it was going to go to sub. I think in terms of executive session, it'll apply to subcommittee or full committee anyway, but, if we want to make a date maybe to go through it, if people are feeling like,
I'd rather do that than do it now.
And then.
Although I'm ready. I got my pen out.
I'm open to whatever the committee wants to decide on this. This is open for discussion. Karen?
Can we at least just discuss the timeline piece just so that I can wrap my head around when we would need to get this done by in order to sort of like be able to have the best candidates possible?
I think it's fair that we can do some check the box things on it, knowing that we can schedule another meeting to maybe, whether it goes on another agenda for an upcoming meeting or whether we schedule another meeting, just because we will, in essence, be our own committee on this. And then we would meet again just to deal with this. But I am open to talking about the timeline and at least working out that kind of check the box kind of thing in terms of what we're looking for. Stephanie?
That makes sense to me because I know that we do want to stay within a time frame to give us the best, to be in the pool with everybody else who's searching. So I think that will be important to figure out so then we can determine the meetings that we need to schedule to get this first piece out.
Yeah, I think it'll give us some structure. I would say we can go right to page 2 and let's just work on the timeline, and that way we can schedule, I think what I'm hearing is we'd like to schedule something where we can come back and finish it while also getting the information from Chad in terms of the executive session portion. I think we'll have that information by the time we regroup again to finalize the RFP. Does that make sense for people? Mm-hmm. Stephanie?
And can we do it when we schedule these as its own meeting? Or are we going to try to tack it onto a regular?
No, I was thinking we can do either, whatever you guys want, I think, because this is something that we should delve into and make sure we get it done correctly. I would not be opposed to having it be a standalone meeting. But I don't hear anyone else's thoughts on that. I would prefer to work on the timeline tonight and then set another standalone meeting to wrap it up and get it sent out, and then know that we'll have the information from the procurement officer in terms of how we can proceed. That's my thought.
Yes.
I agree.
Anyone else? Sound like a plan? So I think we should probably just jump to the timeline portion and kind of look at some dates in terms of how we want to flesh that out, come to somewhat of an agreement on that, and then I will be in touch with the committee in terms of scheduling something to finalize this. So if you look on, it's the very first page under general information, timeline, and then obviously this timeline was fleshed out over a longer period of time, beginning in August, so we would need to adjust. We can just go line by line if you want and just adjust the dates and I don't think anything has to be a specific, it doesn't have to be like January 3rd or I think some of them we can say a month or mid-month or end of month. But I think we should go line by line and talk about it and get it done while we're here. So the first question up for bid would be the RFP for school superintendent recruitment consultant publicly available. When would we want to get this publicly available? Because once we establish that date, we can then work within like the 14-day recommended timeline to give an RFP proposal submission deadline.
That all depends on how long it's going to take to get the final document prepared and determine what criteria everybody wants. So I don't know if that's a week or 2 weeks. So.
Right, I'd have to hear what the committee would like to do in terms of when we can schedule that to determine. I mean, I think we should set a goal for when we want it to go out, and knowing that when we meet, we need to talk about that scope and scope piece, and then the scope of services we should tighten up, and then all of the other things. So I don't know if people want to look at their calendars. How do you want to approach the timeline portion at least?
I just say before you go home, I'm looking at Superintendent over there, fresh off soldier surgery, and I just want to give her the.
Yeah, she's wincing in pain.
You always have the opportunity to opt
I realize,
out.
but I think all my rides have left unless I can convince Nick to leave too.
I can ride too.
Okay, well, how about that? Everyone's flying out of here.
Sue, you definitely should
Thank
have mentioned something earlier.
No, it's fine.
You did not need to, and I know that you are a one-armed bandit.
No worries.
Can't drive, so, yes, go get some rest.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Good night. You are not so lucky, Tom. So let's in the essence of time, let's look at the timeline and talk about calendars and meeting, and I think we can
All right, well, it sounds like.
work this out. Go ahead.
So it sounds like we need to do these beginning things. We need to condense this timeline a little bit, and we need to do some of these things sooner rather than later. If I'm looking at the bottom timeline, I was working backwards from it.
Melanie?
I think you can streamline by just deciding, do you want to get this done before the Christmas break or after the holiday break? So if you want to get it done before, then you just look at the next, how many days are you talking about? 6, 7, 8, 9 working days?
Right, I would.
Is it realistic to get it done then? And if it's not, then we're going to have to put it off until, one of the days when we come back, which is after, January 3rd. I would assume. I don't know if we make an assumption, but.
Armand?
Yeah, the only thing I'd be concerned with, not so much getting this done, but releasing it. If you did it before Christmas or holiday season, I mean, most employers lose a lot of people to vacations and time off and whatever. Are we going to get quality submissions because we're asking people to respond during a holiday period?
Stephanie?
I think maybe the goal is to get the RFP done, and then it needs 1 week for legal notice, and we need time. I think realistically, we get the RFP done before break, and then it's publicly available after the new year. I don't think it can be done before anyway. I don't think.
Karen, did you have?
No.
Is that your hand going up? Or?
No.
I don't want to cut anybody off.
Because even in terms of, we have to post the meeting that we have, and then everybody's on break, so.
Yeah.
Even if say we even met Friday evening, which we're not, but, you don't have much time before break anyway. So it would allow us that time to come up with the RFP and then hand it over, and then it could be posted after the new year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with posting it after the new year, just for the reasons that Armand had said and that you're reiterating. So it would be my interest to get something on the calendar where we could, an hour, I know contrary to how long these meetings go, I'm just not a fan of meetings that go over an hour. I feel like if we can get it done in an hour and a half, especially before the holidays, let's see if we can get something so that we can get Diane to post it. Since we're all here, we can look at calendars and determine that if that's the way that we want to go. But I would agree that we should work on this and get it finalized before the 21st, before the break, in recognition that it could be released January 2.
Actually, one of the legal notices is a paper, and that has a publication date on Thursday, so probably the 3rd of January.
Okay.
For the release date.
So that's good to know. So a January 3rd target. So why don't we try to get that meeting scheduled? And then if that's our goal, we could certainly have it posted. I'm assuming January 3rd, we'd run it till deadline submission around the
minimum
17th.
Is the 17th. That would be 2 weeks.
Okay. And maybe for all intents and purposes, since the 17th is a Thursday, maybe we even do the 18th at noon or something. I don't know. Do people normally have it go until a Friday? We can
yeah,
talk
that's
about
fine.
that, but, so I would say that let's look at our calendars and then we can put this issue to bed, so to speak. Tom, can you just remind us again, or Tom or Marty, is finance sub the 17th?
17th at 6 o'clock, 6:30? Would that be-
Yeah.
6:30. So I'm open to suggestions. I don't know, people probably have things that they want to say when they can't meet, so we should probably start there.
Next week's super tricky for me.
When is the next school committee meeting, did you say?
January.
January 8th.
Okay. Well, since the deadline wouldn't be till the January 18th, wouldn't that mean that your award would have to be at the next school committee meeting? How often do you meet?
Twice a month.
Twice a month?
Next meeting would be the 23rd. Although, we would anticipate that's when we present the budget to you.
Right.
I also don't think receiving bids on the 18th, you'll be prepared on the 23rd to make a recommendation.
We would have to meet.
You would
Yeah,
have to
we'd have to
schedule a
meet
meeting.
between the 18th and the 23rd.
And then if you're doing reference checks and things like that, that takes time.
Mhm.
There's a lot of times with reference checks, you call people, they don't call you back, and you have to follow up with them.
So I think our concern is to get a meeting scheduled where we can actually work on the RFP and get that process at least taken care of. And then once the RFP is ready, some of these other dates need to just fall into line.
Yeah.
Tonight is the 11th. We have to recognize the 48-hour posting rule. So that leaves out anything for the rest of this week. I don't know what people are open to.
Does someone just want to put a date out there and check? Robin, are there any dates that are better for you?
I'll put anything out the 17th through the 21st. Stephanie?
Well, we're meeting at Finance Sub at 6:30. If we move that to 6, it's 6 to 7. We could meet on this at 7 if we're looking at doing it in an hour.
So you won't have these ones.
So we won't have that camera. Okay. All right, then Tuesday.
I'm open to Tuesday.
I can do Tuesday.
We're looking at 6:30, 7.
6. I'm open to whatever.
What was the date? I didn't hear it, I'm sorry.
18th, Tuesday the 18th.
That's fine with me.
What time do people prefer?
Do you guys prefer 6 or 6:30?
I'm not sure if I'll be able to come.
7 anyway? I'll do whatever.
I'll do whatever, if we can get the date, the time is,
I'm free.
I'm free, so.
Come after 1 o'clock appointment that day.
Armand, do you have any time restrictions on that date?
I just need to check. I think I need to move something, so I'm not sure right now.
All right, do we want to say 6:30?
On the 18th.
Sure. 6:30 on the 18th? We'll get that posted. Okay. So 6:30 on the 18th. And that'll give us ample time to check on that executive session process. And then, of course, if any questions come up between, that gives us a week from tonight. If any questions come up, we'll certainly email. And we'll let the rest of the committee know.
So Beth,
Okay.
just for my information, you want us to come prepared with all changes we want made, or are we using this as a template and then we come with changes we want and additions we want?
I think this is a good model to use, like you said. I know Ryan, sounds like you've gone through it and found some discrepancies, so I think that meeting would be the time for us to comb through page by page, whatever Ryan wants to put in. I would spend some time with this document, and just know it inside and out in terms of like highlight the areas that we need to work on, and I think having a separate meeting for that and having that be the focus is the way to go. So that would be my recommendation to everyone. Okay. Any other questions on that process or how that's going to go? Okay. So that'll move us into I don't know if you guys want to, it's late, 9:45. I had potentially put any kind of item on the agenda that we could talk about surrounding the search, not knowing what direction the committee would take in terms, but certainly we don't have to talk about like the formation of the actual search committee at this time.
I would move that.
So we can move that to the next.
Is that something that we could discuss on next week on the 18th?
We could if we post it on the agenda. I think the intent was just to get a feel from the committee about the makeup of how you guys want that committee to look. So we could post that on that agenda, and that would be a shorter and I think quicker agenda item. So seeing that I feel like everybody is in agreement on that, we can move on with new business, and we have an overnight field trip request.
Sunday, February 3rd to Thursday, February 7th, proposal for 4 to 7 students to attend the National CADCA Conference. This is the National Coalition of Drug-Free Community Coalitions. And this is would be coordinated by Shelley Warren, our substance abuse response coordinator, Paul McNeil, the program director for the Close Community Grant, and it's a good leadership opportunity for our students to participate in that National Leadership Forum. The details are in your packet. Again, February 3rd, February 7th, and since it's an overnight trip, it would require your approval.
And we do have a recommended motion.
I move on the recommendation of the superintendent that the school committee approve the overnight field trip for students from Long Meadow High School to travel to Washington, D.C. area on Sunday, February 3rd, 2019 through Thursday, February 7th, 2019 to attend the National CADCA Conference.
Second.
Seeing we have the motion first and seconded, any further discussion on the overnight field trip? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, so the recommendation passed, the motion passes We do have an executive,
I think you probably could forego it. I mean, there's...
The executive session?
Yeah, unless you wanted to chat about letter C. You know, we really don't, we haven't met, and then there's nothing new to report on the G exception, so you could forego it if you wanted.
are you saying you have nothing new to report on this?
Correct.
Okay. Diane, in terms of minutes to be released, what are we looking at with timeline?
They're November 6th, or the executive session?
Yeah.
So you're about a month then. But it's 2 meetings. We have one at the next meeting. So what, we haven't changed our policy yet. It's either a month, 30 days, or 3 meetings is the recommendation.
Yeah, whichever's the latter.
I'm sorry?
I believe it's whichever is the latter.
Right.
So we'd be okay.
Okay, okay. So we do have a recommended motion if anyone wanted to go into executive session, seeing after consulting with the superintendent, if it's not completely necessary. Are we in agreement that we can postpone? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we would just need a recommended motion to adjourn.
I move that the school committee adjourn the December 11th, 2018 school committee meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Meeting is now adjourned.